Hello again, friends, and you are our friends, and welcome back to another edition of Jim Cornette's Drive Thru right here, wherever you are, on whatever day this is, wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. I'm your host, the great Brian Last, and of course, joining me, the man who delayed production a couple of days this week, the leader of the cult of Cornette, the exalted one of the hot tub, Mr. Jim Cornette.
I don't know whether to wind my ass or scratch my watch. I really, what day, you're confused about what day it is. It's Groundhog Day for me, but I'll tell you don't blame me. First of all, don't cast aspersions, accusations, and or any other type of effrontery at me for delaying production a few days. We were already scheduled to delay production a day and thus release a day this week in order to bring people the topical news on the big Hells in a Cell. Hell in a Cells? Hells in a Cell. What is the plural of the 18 cage matches that were held that night? Nevertheless, anyway, we were already going to do that, so we bring the people that programming, and then I, at the last minute, because of a change in schedule of work done here on the castle, involving people mixing cement and laying stone and drilling in things and carrying things around and putting things in various places. I had to be on the scene in order to facilitate all this stuff being done in the right way. You can't just have somebody lay a ton of stone and then say, no, I don't like that, do it again. So I had to be out there and pointing at things, gesticulating and finger pointing. I looked like Twinkle Toes McFingerbang out there yesterday, pointing at all them people, telling them what to do. But that's why we had to delay the show one day, Brian Last. One day. Do not try to get heat on me with the Cult of Cornette listeners. I am, after all, the most popular, the most beloved personage currently in and around professional wrestling and the various podcasting worlds. People love me. I walk down the city streets, they throw flower petals at me, and you're trying to ruin that love relationship, that passionate love and worship that the people have for me by accusing me of delaying production. I think not, sir. I do disagree with that.
Didn't accuse you of anything. I made a statement of fact, and it was 2 days, not 1 day, for the record.
It wasn't 2 days. We were going to tape yesterday.
Which would have been delayed 1 day.
But therefore, I only delayed you 1 day. I didn't delay you 2 days. I'll delay you. Stace said something one time, smart ass to me. She said, well, I'll just call you so-and-so. I said, you better watch your mouth or I'll just call you long distance. That's what I got to say about that.
Kids don't even know what that means anymore.
Oh, come on.
What's a long distance call? You just make a call now.
Well, you call long distance out of your local calling area. What is your local calling area these days?
What was your biggest phone bill before you were in the business? Well, before you were a manager in the business.
What?
Before you were a manager, what was your biggest phone bill?
Oh my God, that's... I know people think I have a photographic memory, but 40 years ago, my phone bill, was it $25 a month to have a phone back then, or $15, whatever the fuck it was? If I called long distance, it was to Bill Apter or the fine folks in Mankato, Minnesota. So I don't know that I ever had any kind of phone bill of any size before. I didn't have a phone till I started taking pictures and doing the photography at the gardens, making a little money. And I had an extra phone line put in my room. As a matter of fact, I think that was $16 a month at that point, 1977 or 8-ish.
Your mom was okay with it?
Well, yeah, I was paying for it. She said the only thing she wasn't going to do was pay for it. Jimmy, we've got a phone down here in the kitchen. I swear, when she passed away, I'm thinking it was when she passed away. I don't think she had done it yet. She had made the step up to a cordless handset that one of those cordlesses that they had in like the late 80s, early 90s, that you had the walkie-talkie antenna that you pulled out and everything, and it had push buttons, but she never made the $1 a month upgrade on the phone bill to get touch tone service. So when I would come visit, like when I lived in Charlotte or in Knoxville and Smoky Mountain, I'd come and visit to use my calling card. Remember that? You had a credit card that you put a number in. You could make long distance calls from anywhere and they charge it to your credit card. I'd put my calling card number in. I had to switch the fucking gimmick, the little switch over on her handset from pulse to touch tone to enter the card number. She had a dial phone until at least the late 80s, come to think of it. If not later. She was frugal.
Good. You should be if you want to hold on to your money.
What now?
You should be frugal if you want to hold on to your money.
Yes. Even if you really get frugal, you could hold on to some other people's money too. But before we get started, did you see the grasshopper-legged outlaw guy?
That video just blew up in like a couple of days. Someone posted it in a mothership, and then all of a sudden, like 100 people sent it to me on Twitter, and then other people started posting it all over the place. And I watched it once, and I was the total amount of times I need to watch that.
What? Is this old? Is this new?
I think it's new.
I don't know if the people out there, we love the people. I don't know if everybody might know about this, but apparently, maybe you have more background. I'll tell you what I know. I see video on the Twitter machine of a ring. Obviously, I think it was pretty much a do-it-yourself hand-built ring in somebody's backyard. There's a referee in the ring. There's 3 or 4 people on the other side of the ring. I don't know if there was actually a crowd there or if this was just folks having fun in the backyard. A guy they're playing NWO music, right, for this guy's entrance. And it's just a stationary camera shot. So he walks into the camera and he gets in the ring, and I didn't have long to see what his physical condition was before it changed rapidly. But it looked to me like he was like a miniature version of Crusher Blackwell. He had a big belly, little short legs, not very thick, as we'll find out. And whatever. And I think he had a belt over his shoulder. And he gets in the ring and he gets up on the second rope to acknowledge that. You hear, what was it? Would you think there had to be 10 or 12 people there by the amount of cheering? And he acknowledges these cheers, and then he does the Glenn Kulka. I've told this story, former Canadian Football League player, trained in developmental, makes a shot in his hometown, one of his, big debut. They play the music. He jumps off the ropes just like this, and he lands and he breaks his leg. That was Glenn Kulka, 280-pound, built like a brick shithouse, fucking former Canadian Football League player. This guy jumps off the second rope, turns around, and lands flat-footed in the middle of this homemade ring. And I didn't even know that this was an injury that could happen if you tried. But both of his legs at the knee at the exact same time bent in the opposite direction. His knees bent backwards instead of forwards, the direction under which nature intended it. It's hard to even describe this. And that's what Shane Helms on Twitter said, a dude got grasshopper legs. Both of his knees just caved in and he dropped, and he's so fucked up as he's rolling around. His legs are flopping from the knees down, just like he's the wacky waving arm leg inflatable tube man. I can't imagine the damage what you would even have to fix in an instance like this. The scaffold match bump, I tore my ACL and tore a bunch of the cartilage. And that was just my leg going sideways, too far for the ligament, but everything else was still. Oh, do you know anything more about this? Where this was, who this was, where we should send the flowers, what's the funeral home?
I don't know any other information about it. It just popped up all of a sudden and went viral, and it was an outlaw mud show. Literally, there was mud around the ring.
And his name is Mud. And you know what? I'm sure after he came to and the drugs wore off, whatever they gave him, and, you know, the surgeries and the cast from asshole to appetite that he's probably laying in right now, I don't know which hurts worse, the idea that he did that happened to him, or the idea that he did it to himself, probably in front of every single friend he possessed in the world.
Or the idea one of the 12 people that were there filmed it and said, oh, I got to share this with everyone.
Yeah, well, and did you see the referee just looked, just stared, and was just standing there like...
Well, just like the referees in real wrestling.
Flopping. Well, it must have been Rick Knox, right? The reanimated corpse referee from the Tim Burton production that referees over on at All Friends Wrestling. And then the guy just kept filming. I mean, it was a stationary shot from a ways back, but nobody ran to help this guy. And then somebody kind of rolled in the ring about 20 seconds later and is like, hey, what's going on?
Did you see the Sid injury when it happened?
Yeah, not live, but like the day after on tape or whatever. That was bad. This was even more. If it can be possible, I don't even know if he would have broken any bones. Maybe the kneecaps, because this was a thing where it's just like every ligament is gone. Every tendon and ligament in the knee would have to be gone. But I think the bones just bent and just popped out of themselves. And who was the football player? Joe Theismann. I remember when that happened.
Yeah, Lawrence Taylor.
No, Lawrence Taylor. Yeah, I've never seen it. It was so ridiculous looking that you had to look at it a few times. I did, to make sure that somebody wasn't playing with the goddamn video editor, right? One of these deep fakes, because it just didn't seem that could be possible. And it was like a fucking 3-foot drop. It was a 3-foot fucking drop off the second rope in the ring. Anyway.
A lot of guys, I'm assuming with Sid Vicious, a lot of guys spend a lot of time in the gym working on their upper body, may not pay much attention to their legs.
No, that's not true, actually. When you see a guy with a big upper body and fucking tiny legs, you can be assured that he has exhausted every remedy for that past calf implants that some of these bodybuilders get or whatever, because that's every time I've heard guys that worked out talking to each other, if you're a bodybuilder and you got skinny bird legs, it's the first thing you think about apparently when you wake up in the morning, because that's always the thing. Yeah, but as a matter of fact, Ken Wayne worked out when he was trying to get, he was like a Bobby Eaton, and he never had a lot of muscle tone. He was a heck of a worker, athlete, whatever. But he'd do push-ups and he'd bench press, and he got his upper body, but his little tiny legs. He's in the gym one day doing something, trying to work on his legs, and one of the guys said, "Hey, Ken, you better watch off them legs. You might break off and stick up your ass." Hey, I didn't know it was possible until this guy did it on video. But no, it's genetic. You've seen some guys. I remember there was a guy that worked, Nelson Royal trained him in the Carolinas, Colt Steele. He was a big guy, and he trained, and he had a good looking upper body, but his calves were fucking massive. And I mean, like, guys like Warlord and Barbarian used to compliment him on his fucking calves. It's a genetic thing. No matter what you do or even what you take, all of your muscles, according to everything I've been told by people who do this type of thing, because now everybody's going to say, Cornette's giving us bodybuilding tips. sometimes you just can't get the fucking arms or the legs or the or whatever you're to go with it. So rest assured, they don't forget those parts of their body. I can't understand that I'll tell you what, if anybody in the world had the dedication to cure childhood poverty or hunger or cancer or something, as Sid did, to work out and freak out if he hadn't been working out, we'd all be better off.
Well, you know, that poor wrestler at that Outlaw Mud show who got hurt, obviously what he was doing is living out his dream, living out his fantasy. Standing on the top rope, it's probably what he always dreamed of. Standing on the top rope, taking in the cheers of the crowd. It may not have gone the way he wanted, but he could always get a painting made to commemorate the moment.
That's a good idea. As a matter of fact, that's an excellent idea, because since he's never going to be able to climb those ropes and stand up and do that ever again, he could have a beautiful portrait of it. I'm sure somebody took a picture, and folks, if you've got a picture of a family a member that's gone, of a family get-together where some of the people are no longer with us, or you've got multiple pictures of multiple places, things, or people that you would like to have combined, whatever, you want a custom painting for the holidays, if your family isn't going to be all together, for the holidays as gifts, a hand-painted compilation portrait from Paint Your Life is the perfect gift. We've been talking about them for months on the program here. They take photographs of your family members, friends, places you've been, even beloved pets. And they can either make a hand-painted portrait of that, or they can combine different photos, have different people in the photo or in the portrait at the same time. So it's a professional hand-painted portrait created from any picture. You just send any picture of yourself, your kids, your family, special place, the whole 9 yards, or the pictures you want combined. You choose from a team of world-class artists that they've got, and you work with them on the details, and then you get your custom-made, hand-painted portrait. It takes about 3 weeks. It's quick and easy. And you can either make it a holiday gift for somebody that you love or yourself. Or if there's somebody out there that hates your stinking guts and you really want to mess with them, get a painting of yourself and send it to them. Whatever. For the holidays, for any days, paintyourlife.com. There's no risk. If you don't love the final painting, your money is refunded, guaranteed. And right now, as a limited time offer, just because we know people around here, 20% off the painting and free shipping if you text the word DRIVE, D-R-I-V-E, to 64,000. That's 64 and 3 zeros. Text DRIVE to 64,000. Paint your life. Celebrate the moments that matter most. Brian, I know, as a matter of fact, you have commissioned a painting that you can put in your office there that's going to inspire you of your most beloved place on earth, the outside perimeter of the New York Stock Exchange.
That's not necessarily my happiest place, but yes, it'll be a picture of me and my certificates of Berkshire Hathaway Class A stock. Will be hanging on the walls right here.
I understand that people at Paint Your Life talked to you and you were the first customer that they ever turned down because you were a complete idiot.
Some people want them to paint someone else's life.
You know, as a matter of fact, that would be an idea. So paint somebody, find somebody with a life you'd rather had than yours and paint that life. No, all right. Anyway, but the folks that Paint Your Life, we Josh and we Kid, our fine sponsors here on the program. But Paint Your Life is a real deal, folks. Anyway, this is your program, right?
That's right.
What are we doing? I got one thing here, though.
Okay.
Just a palate cleanser. This is from Jeff. And this email did come in at 5:02 a.m. on Saturday, October 17th. Dear Jim, it's 5 a.m. The baby won't go back to sleep. What else am I going to think about? Question for you and Brian. Waffle House hash browns, scattered, smothered, covered, or topped? Well, I'll tell you, the best of you all, Jeff. Jeff, I'm going scattered, smothered, and covered. Brian, what is your pick? I know that you will obviously go off the reservation on this. Waffle House hash browns. What's your order?
I don't know if that was English or what the hell he said. What smothered, covered, what was it?
What? When you go to Waffle House,
I don't go to Waffle House.
Hash browns?
We've established I don't go to Waffle. There aren't Waffle Houses anywhere near. I was going to say anywhere near where I live. There may not be one in the entire tri-state area up here.
You're a man that's traveled the country, though, and the world. Right. You've been to Hawaii.
The last time I was in a Waffle House.
You've been to Knoxville, Tennessee. You didn't eat at Waffle House when you were in Knoxville, Tennessee at Smoky Mountain Wrestling Fan Week?
I ate at a Waffle House. The last time I remember actually eating at a Waffle House was in Amarillo, Texas in 1997 for the Terry Funk retirement show, which turned into it's my last match in Amarillo. And I was at the Waffle House. Scott Cornish.
I helped him book that, as a matter of fact. He called the office, and I was doing third-party bookings at that point, so I helped get those guys on the show. Anyway.
I was at the Waffle House with Scott Cornish, Bob Barnett, and the late, great Harry White, and I was really upset to learn that they didn't have French toast on the menu at what was supposed to be a big breakfast chain, and I gave them so much shit that they made me French toast. So I'm one of the very few people who could say I had French toast at the Waffle House.
I'll tell you what, I don't know what might have happened to that syrup when you New Yorker came in and ordered some French toast at the Amarillo Waffle House. All right, well, just so that since everybody else has already mentally sent their order in, when you go to Waffle House, you order your hash browns depending on what you want on them. Now, scattered is just plain because they scatter the hash browns on the grill.
I would have scattered. I would order scattered.
Smothered means they put onions on them. Covered means they put cheese on them.
Maybe I'll have smothered.
Because that's what my order is: scattered, smothered, and covered, crispy, not burnt. Because if you don't say that, if you don't say crispy, then they'll just get them hot, but they'll be mushy. But if you say crispy, sometimes they burn them and you don't want to see any black. So crispy, not burnt means brown, but no black. But scattered, smothered, covered, diced is if you want tomatoes. Peppered is if you want jalapenos. Capped is if you want mushrooms. Topped is chili. And country is sausage gravy. But I have never found a real fondness for many Waffle House's sausage gravy because it depends on who cooks it, and it doesn't taste like Aunt Lola's. So I go scattered, smothered, covered, crispy, not burnt.
Based on what you just said, I would probably order scattered, smothered, crispy, not burnt.
Well, you are an awful plain white boy.
Wouldn't want any cheese in there. But more than likely, I'd be with the civilized folk at IHOP.
Yeah.
So it really doesn't matter.
Well, IHOP doesn't have the Texas bacon chicken melt either.
What the hell is that?
The Texas bacon,
what is a melt?
A melt is where they melt the cheese over the thing. They've got patty melts, which is burgers, or patty melt. You know, the burger, a patty melt will come on Texas toast. The melt rather than the burger, but the Texas bacon chicken melt is you got Texas toast, you got a grilled chicken breast, actually on the flat top. They do everything on the flat top. There is no broiling at the Waffle House. Chicken breast with bacon and American cheese melted on the Texas toast. Boom. And especially if it's to go, when they wrap it up in the aluminum foil, because it's just come off the grill and they wrap it in the aluminum foil. When you pull it out of the bag, you have to open that sucker and let it air out a little bit, or you will burn all the fucking skin off your tongue. But I like the Texas bacon chicken melt with the hash brown scattered, smothered, and covered.
When was the last time you actually ate at a Waffle House?
Well, since I have been nowhere outside the city of Louisville in the last year almost, it's been a little while, but I didn't, when I was in Atlanta in October, I would say probably last August. So a little over a year. When I was traveling, I would do the drive-thru on my daily trips, drives, and then I would try to get a hotel room because in the South, Brian, you've got at least a 50% chance that there's a Waffle House within sight of your hotel if you're staying in an exit off the interstate.
So
therefore you're getting out of a fucking wrestling show late or a convention late or whatever it is. Instead of trying to rush through the drive-thru, sometimes you can just leisurely go to Waffle House because they never close their doors. I don't usually eat there by myself because then I have to stare at everyone else.
Well, that's what I was asking. I actually didn't know they had drive-thru until you just said
they don't
that.
have a drive-thru. You go in, but you're watching them literally. You walk in the door, you sit down. The lady with the same number of tattoos and teeth says, "What would you like?" You tell her. She screams, "Hash brown, scattered, smothered, and covered. Texas bacon chicken melt." And then the guy that's 5 feet away from her fucking throws the shit on the grill. You watch him cook it. They sack it up and hand it to you. You're back across the street in your hotel in fucking 12 minutes.
Do you think Waffle House is like on Grubhub or Uber Eats or Seamless? Is it something you could order and it'll be delivered to you?
I would think that you would almost have to be starving and on the verge of fucking scurvy before that you would spend the money and the effort to Grubhub Waffle House. The Grubhub charge would be twice what the fucking meal cost. Waffle House is for when in the middle of the night or when you're staying at the hotel next door and you don't want to go anywhere or there's no other option. And then, boom. There's Waffle House. Grubhub.
All right. Well, like you said, this is my show.
Yeah. Well, do something with it.
Well,
don't forget to remind the folks to vote. We've got less than a week now to restore some fucking semblance of dignity to our country. If for nothing else, just to quit being embarrassed and ashamed every time we wake up in the morning. Little lunatics in charge of things. Vote, 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 vote. Have you told them to vote yet?
I was just about to.
Well, go ahead.
Vote, 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 vote. And by the way, on the ballot now in New Jersey this year is the legalization of marijuana. So there's a very good chance I'll be doing this show stoned next year. Stay tuned for more information.
Well, maybe it could be an improvement. We never know about these things.
Let me tell you, some of your food suggestions may sound better. If I'm
see, you got to badmouth my food.
That wasn't bad-mouthing it. It just said it would sound better if I was sitting here with the munchies. And
yeah, it would sound better if I took flavor-enhancing drugs in order to make your direct sound good. That's the way you phrased it. The context it was in. All right, but so we've crossed that off our list. Vote. I'll have more to say about that on the experience this coming week.
Well, I guess, unfortunately, what we have to talk about right now, and this is kind of sad news, is that we had to watch the Hell in a Cell pay-per-view event.
Yeah, we did.
And why don't we get this review out of the way? I will say right now, I watched the first match or two live, and then I said, I can't do this. And I watched the rest yesterday. In this sense, I'm happy you delayed the show another day. I couldn't get through it. It took me a second day. Luckily, there was something I thought was okay on the show, but we'll talk more about it. I'll let you kick off the festivities here.
Well, one of us needs some relief. You know, when you said there were going to be 3 cage matches on the I thought, how the fuck are they going to do this? And one of them's going to be a girls' match. And okay, well, let's let everybody have a cage match. And I thought maybe somehow they're going to pull this off where having 3 cage matches, each one doesn't hurt the other one. That was not the case, in my opinion. They didn't pull that off. Starting with the Stewie Griffin compliment sandwich. The Thunderdome light show, and when they open that show up, it's impressive as hell. It's an impressive open, and the virtual fans and all the lights and etc. You know, it's great. It's a great atmosphere, but then the matches have to start. And then to me, honestly, it's distracting as all fuck. Because here's the thing. It's a great way to open up, and you look like you got a nice arena and all the lights and the fans and everything. But then when the fans are there, the virtual fans, and it's like they're just everybody's wrestling in front of this multicolored wallpaper. It's just distracting to me. It distracts my eyes visually, etc. But they've spent a lot of money. They're trying to do something at least. They've got. I get, rather than the virtual fans, the more distracting thing, as I've mentioned, is the fake crowd noise, because if they could figure out a way for the people on screen to at least be making the noise that if someone was making actual noise reacting to what was going on instead of the canned shit where it's just kind of a steady hum, you know what I'm saying? It's a steady boo or a steady yay or a steady boo.
And the fake chanting is another thing. And
oh my God, I know, but there's a fake, this is awesome.
I heard a fake holy shit chant.
Well, there's been a lot of those.
They do fake holy shit chants? I've never heard of that before.
Before COVID, there was a lot of fake fucking holy shit chants. All right. Anyway, they started out, the first match is the I Quit match, Reigns and Uso. The main event, what they've sold the show on. And I'm sure that it won out because Paul Heyman is involved, and he's smart enough to know that even though it's ridiculous to have the match that sold the whole show on first, it was the only way that they would at least have a virgin cage. And so whatever they did would not have already been done before, or it just the similarities, or just the fact that here's the girls in the cage, here's the other guys in the cage, and now here's the big cage match. Because Paulie's a genius. I'm willing to give him the fact that if he was behind this, that the second half we're going to chalk up to poor execution. Because I don't know what... I loved the first half of this, and then they just lost the fucking plot. And I loved the package. Because remember, we were talking on the program when you told me about this a week or two ago. I said, okay, I loved the match that Reigns and Uso had before, where, you know, they established that Reigns was a heel and that Uso wouldn't quit, but that Reigns is really a dominant prick, and the way they did it. And remember, I praised that. I liked it. I said, I just don't see how they're getting a rematch out of that. Well, then I saw this package. I said, okay, I can see this rematch now. I'm still interested because Reigns is incredible. It's a believable issue, a family rivalry, Heyman's fingerprints on it, so nobody's winking and being funny. As serious as a heart attack. They did a nice angle on Raw, which we do not watch because of the fact that 98% of it sucks donkey schlongs. But they did a nice angle where they had Uso clubbering Reigns with the chair. So I'm like, okay. I'm sure they're going to do something where once again Reigns is physically dominant, but this kid won't quit, and they're going to make this fucking Reigns an even bigger heel, right? And after being shocked because it was the first match, I can say, okay, Heyman's smart enough to know the most important thing, if there's 3 cage matches, needs to be first. And the way that they started out, Reigns is dominant, and he's pacing it slow there because Uso can sell. And they were taking the shit seriously, and they didn't just go out to do cool shit. Even when Uso would have the flurry, he made the dives look reasonable. You know, because he's trying to fucking do anything he can to beat this bigger fucking badder guy. Michael Cole said at one point, oh my God, he's run him into the hell in a cell. Examine that verbiage, Brian Last. It would be running him into the cell because the match, what you undergo is hell in the cell, but you can't run someone into the hell in the cell, can you?
Anything can happen in the World Wrestling Federation.
No, come on. You must admit I'm right.
Of course you're right. Michael Cole is horrible. Michael Cole.
No, I'm not saying Michael Cole. I'm saying that was an awkward, misverbaged, whatever the fuck. You run him into the hell in a cell. Anyway, Uso's selling like he's really suffering. And the hope spots that he had, if there'd been fans, they would have gotten huge reactions. And Reigns trash talking. I like that. I did make a note here. Once they should have had at least a regular match open the show to set some kind of baseline, because this was the first half of this was so much different from a normal match that I would have liked for people to have seen a normal match and maybe two. I know I'm going crazy because this is sold as the main event, so there should be two matches on before it, but just have normal match. And then this became something different, but it's different anyway. And Reigns can sell too when he has to. And they made it plausible. To the point where the fake crowd noise was bothering me at this point, because the guys in the ring were doing such a good job. I was hearing their contact and I was hearing their trash talking, and it would have registered even more if you didn't have that fake just white noise behind it, right? And they brought the leather strap in, turned it into a strap match, and they're whipping each other. Here's where I was about to say, well, this is the best goddamn thing that we're going to see this week on wrestling television. And then all of a sudden, the fucking teeter-totter went back the other way. I haven't even asked you any of your opinion on this. We don't talk about these things beforehand. But was there a spot in this match for you that took it from, I'm liking this, to, oh, fuck, they've lost it? And tell me what it was, if there was.
You know, when I watched this match, I just kept thinking, I don't know what to make of this. I'll save my thoughts on the commentating for later on in the show. But it was atrocious. And the video package, like you said, was fantastic. It got me into seeing this. And I recognize that you do things a little bit differently when there isn't a live crowd there. And I didn't mind some of the taunting early in the match. But when the match became full-on dialogue.
Yeah, okay.
I think that's the point where I was like, what is this? I've never heard as much talking during a match. And I'm not talking about Sid Vicious calling spots.
Yeah.
I'm just flat-out dialogue.
The conversation, the dialogue, trash talking, whatever. Okay, then go back. Well, you won't go back and watch it again. But if anybody listening out there wants to go back, watch until they did the spot where Uso tried to choke Roman Reigns with the strap they've been whipping each other with, and first was so fired up about doing it, he couldn't fucking get it around his fucking head, right? He couldn't get the strap around his head. And then once they did that choke out spot, it was awkward. It didn't look that great. There was the fumbling with the strap. It killed the momentum that they weren't going at 100 miles an hour, but they had an escalating situation in their match, in their fight, in their conflict until that point. Then the Roman Reigns turned around and choked Uso out, and that killed it even worse. And then the referee was phony as a football bat, saying over and over, well, you got to say I quit. You want to say, you got to say I... And the announcers thing, and I know why they put this in, because they're trying to explain what they're doing, which their problem was what they were doing was wrong to do. Because it took it out of, these guys are actually having a pretty good, believable conflict here, to, okay, the guy's completely unconscious, but he's got to come back to consciousness to say I quit before the match is over with. Now they've lost it. Now each one of them gets choked out, and they're laying there, and the referee has to repeat the same verbiage over and over in a monotone fashion with fake emotion, if that. Then Roman Reigns spends so long trying to convince Uso to say, I quit, and like you said, just full-on dialogue. At that point, what I had been enjoying and what I was going to say I was wrong about, and they should have rematched this, I started fast-forwarding. I said, let's just see when they get back in action. And I fast-forwarded to the steps, the spot where he did the drop kick on the apron to him, then he put the steps, did the drop kick to the steps to the head. And here comes Adam Pearce, bless him, and several other people in suits and officials to stop the thing. Okay, fine. That could have been fine because the guy's obviously not able to continue. But then the dramatic snail's pace of Roman Reigns closes them up in the cage and throws the steps in and puts the steps on Jay and talks to him. I fast forwarded again. Just get to something. And then finally the other Uso brother comes in and stops the murder. And Roman Reigns sits there and cries. I was fast forwarding through all of this because they lost the plot on what they were trying to do here, because they were trying to do a fucking Shakespearean dramatic scene about their family crisis rather than a believable fight over the family crisis that they had us believe, until they all tried to be goddamn thespians. And then he grabs the Uso brother and chokes him out, and Jay has to say I quit to save his brother. I'm not even as pissed off about that a guy says I quit when another guy's in a fucking hole, because that actually, if they had continued the match that they were having up until the leather strap chokeout spots started, and instead of doing that, if they had kicked it up in a gear where Uso got another fucking flurry, and then fucking Reigns beat him down, and he wouldn't fucking quit, just like last time, but he really dug into him, have the brother come in, put the brother in the fucking hold, and have Jay finally say, I would have bought that. But what was it, 10, 15 minutes that the last part of the match was to do 3 or 4 meaningful moves, and it just fucking it was moving at a glacial pace, and they lost what they were doing. And then Alpha and Sika came out. My God, their fucking social security numbers must be 1. When they were in school, they didn't have history. Their birth certificates were chiseled into granite. They're so old, but they're still tough. But they gave the Roman Reigns the lay as the tribal chief. That was a nice touch. But it went from a match to just dramatic reading, did it not?
It certainly did. And the pacing, it just got very slow. It took forever to get to wherever they were going. When Roman Reigns locked everyone in the cage and he gets back in the ring, there's like, I don't know, 8 people in there, agents and referees. Why did they scatter? If they're so concerned, why don't they try to make him stop? He's going to fight all 8 of them?
Yeah, well, actually, that would have been a great spot.
Yeah, if they had done it.
Can you think about that? If everybody came in and then they're all fucking workers or former workers, if Reigns had fucking hit a spear or something on every single one of those guys, give Uso a fucking chance to recover, let him have a fucking flurry, then stop him and beat him down. And fucking, since the door has already been opened by the other guys that came in, is that they're still selling, and let the fucking brother come in and snatch him in the front face lock. They went into a finish that should have taken fucking 3 or 4 minutes, and it took 15.
You know,
I don't know.
A lot of people have said that Roman Reigns is the next guy to go to Hollywood and make movies, and obviously he got his new teeth and everything. But I have to say,
Wait a minute, has he been to see Leno? I didn't know anything about his teeth. No. What happened to his teeth?
Well, they're just new. They're like white porcelain teeth.
Whitest teeth I ever came across.
But what I was going to say is it's like acting now. I mean, literally, this match was half wrestling, half acting.
Yeah.
And just nonstop dialogue. And that's the only word I could use for it. I think Jey Uso showed a lot in this feud. That he is, the Usos are probably underrated because so many people focus on the Young Bucks. People ignored the Usos.
Oh, good Lord. I can't imagine how anybody's focusing on the Young Bucks and haven't seen the Usos. There's no similarity there whatsoever. But, all the Samoans can work. But these guys specifically, Reigns and Uso, have showed they can sell. Their work is good. It's just whoever is over dramatizing this thing. And that's why I've given Paul some compliments either this was something he laid out, but it was performance did not equate to the vision he had, or some things were shoehorned in here that he had no control over, or there was a timing misunderstanding, because I don't see how he would have thought that this was going to be an exciting thing.
And I like the end with Afa and Sika. I just wish they had gotten there quicker. But this match took so long and was so painful to get through eventually. That was why I said, I don't know how much more of this show I could watch tonight. It was specifically because of this match.
And actually, I didn't watch anything live, but in between all the various finger pointing I was doing at the people working, I watched all of it. But like you, after I watched this, I had to go do something else for a while, because I was just like, But anyway, I don't know what to say. I was really going to put the fucking thing over, I swear. But, go back. Anybody that wants to look at it now that they've heard me talk about it, go back and tell me whether looking at it until suddenly the chokeout spot, when all of a sudden drama and dialogue came in and the match left, if they'd have just kicked it up a notch and gone into a finish there, I would have thought the whole thing was great. All right. You know who was next? I finally got to see him wrestle. Have we ever seen, that was a running joke when we were watching Raw during that dark time that we watched it every week. Did we ever see Elias wrestle?
We just talked about this on one of the shows, and I couldn't remember if we actually had or hadn't.
He would always come out, he'd either be in the ring on a stool with the guitar, and he'd start a song and somebody'd interrupt and there'd be something happen, or I think when he did get knocked off the roof one time, didn't he?
Him and Baron Corbin had a legendary feud, and I think he got knocked off something.
Yeah, well, anyway.
Was it that little overhang where Ron Gronkowski jumped off at WrestleMania?
Yes. Yeah, no, it was yes, that's what it was. The crow's nest from the old NXT set or whatever. And I was going to say he might have not got knocked off, but he got kicked out of wrestling school. No, but anyway, it's Jeff Hardy versus Elias. Explain this to me, if you will, Lucy. Elias walks and talks to the ring. He's got the microphone as he's making his entrance. He's talking. He gets in the ring. He's got his guitar. He sings a song. He's a stone cold heel. The place sucks. The people are ugly. And, but when we were watching Raw, he's the one that got run over by a car. He got run over. That's to explain why he's been gone, because I guess he's really been injured. But he got run over by a car, and Jeff Hardy was falsely accused of being the driver. They arrested him, drug him out in handcuffs, the fake cops. I think we actually reviewed that and talked about how all the holes in the fucking presentation where you could tell it wasn't a real arrest.
Yeah.
But they've said on their own television, because Jeff was saying, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what you're talking about. And that the announcer said Jeff has been falsely accused. And didn't they were pointing the finger at Sheamus or Seamus or Sheamus. Because the guy that did it, driving the car, had red hair and some kind of red doppelganger mustache or whatever. Now, the guy that got run over by the car is the heel, and he's mad and come back to get even with the baby face that they've already said on this program wasn't the guy that did it. Have I encapsulated the gist of this angle so far that we are being presented here?
I think so. I mean, I have no idea what the hell's going on with any of this.
That's what I'm asking. The guy that got run over comes back and is the heel. The guy that they've already said didn't do it is the guy he's mad at for doing it. Was he in the hospital and didn't watch the fucking show, Elias? That's why he didn't know these things?
He's not the only one not watching the show.
Well, you got me there. You got a point there. There wasn't really anything wrong with this match. But between the last match that we just talked about, I really couldn't get back into it. And then at one point going home, Elias powerbombed Jeff almost on his head, one of those pop-up, jump down, turn around, pick a bale of cotton things where he was up on his shoulders and he spun him and drops him in a power bomb, and he was almost headed head first. And then Elias ends up on the apron. Jeff goes to the top to swanton him. Elias rolls off. Jeff jumps back down, goes out, grabs his guitar and hits him over the head with, or over the back with it, and gets disqualified. That was pretty much it, right?
I can't really add too much more to that.
Next on this program that we paid for, ladies and gentlemen, do you feel anal raped yet?
No, it was on the network. So, I mean, technically I didn't pay just for the pay-per-view event.
Well, I paid for it so I could watch it on my big TV. Because it's a pay-per-view. Law and Otis. If it had even... I love Bradshaw and I love Ron Simmons as people and wrestlers. Maybe not as actors. It was just a rib thing that they did. You know, Bradshaw being the judge in wrestlers' court sometimes. And this whole court case where Otis, Miz and Morrison didn't want him to have the Money in the Bank case and blah, blah, blah. I instituted a new rule. Anytime there is a fake court proceeding that is not even, no effort is even being put into to make it in any way legitimate, it's just bad, unfunny comedy so that the writers can justify their ridiculous salaries, and they're pretty much not justified in any other way. And unless Stephen P. New is a part of the proceedings, there's a court rule now. No court cases on wrestling shows. I fast forwarded. Because what the fuck? Seriously? And, you know, then I get to an Otis and Tucky promo. Did you see his poor partner, his poor friend in, what is their name? Heavy Machinery, Working Men,
Heavy
whatever.
Machinery.
He's
Working
actually
Men.
got a name tag that says Tucky. Well, I don't the Working Men. You know, Tucky on it. So I see their promo, so I fast forward that. And then it comes to the match, Miz versus Otis. And Morrison is in the court. If it had been Morrison, I'd have watched it, because it's the learning disabled frog versus the fat comedy figure who has been made a complete imbecile and also has a lunchbox painted to match his Money in the Bank case. Here's exactly what I wrote. No goddamn way I'm watching this. And I fast forwarded some more. And Otis Campbell lost the match in the fucking briefcase, and his partner turned on him, and they did some fake fighting in the back. And I saved 30 minutes out of my life. The fact that I wouldn't have put this entire segment, if you can call it that, on a show at the church gym to let the guys get some practice in front of people. If that tells you what I thought about this whole fucking thing. Do you have any thoughts on it?
I thought the court thing was ridiculous. I've seen multiple fake court segments in WWE history I've thought about while watching this. Unlike you, I don't love JBL. I think he's garbage. I just want to throw that in there. The Miz, I could see, you and I differ on him as a heel in the ring. With that said, everything he does outside of the ring to me is overly shticky, bad acting from a bad reality show star. Didn't like that. Otis, this guy is a legitimate wrestler. This guy was scouted by Jerry Briscoe. This guy you could probably do something with if they didn't saddle him with this stupid gimmick where he's an adult who acts like a child. I hated all this. I didn't pay much attention to the match. I don't care about the feud between Otis and Ducky or whatever you said his name is.
It's Tucky. Now, don't be disrespectful to Tucky.
I just don't care. I don't see why anyone cares. Why does anyone care about any of this? Nobody cares.
I don't even think the people who like the WWE would care about something this goofy. Do they?
I hope not. I mean, this was awful. This was terrible. I was hoping they would go to dinner and break out into song. I mean, this was horrible.
Hey, watch it. Yeah. Don't knock my good ideas like that. All right, speaking of a good idea, what would you say to me? What would you say to me, Brian Last, if I was to tell you that I fast-forwarded Sasha and Bayley?
I would say that you missed the best thing on the show.
Well, then I won't tell you that because I didn't. But I didn't miss the best thing on the show. Let me editorialize first. I am not being anti-women's wrestling or feminist, or, well, not feminist, sexist, against femininity, or whatever the case. I like the athleticism of the top girls' matches. Whether it was Rhea Ripley and Charlotte who stole the show at WrestleMania by being the only ones to just try to put on an athletic performance and being able to do so rather than all the other gaga with no fans in the crowd. I loved Ronda Rousey's debut because it was a classically laid out pro wrestling match. We talked about that. I have loved other things that Rhea Ripley has done with some. The point is, when you have women who don't look like they would break in half, and their perfect blonde hair and their surgical accents, if they were engaging in a legitimate physical contest, and that they have the ability, either they have the legitimate skills or they have the ability to work those skills and make you believe they're having a hand-to-hand physical conflict, I'm all about that. But for the greater good of the whole business and everybody in it, male and female, it is completely ridiculous that we are watching women go out there and do cage matches with chairs and Pillmanizing the girl's neck and fucking weapons and kendo sticks and stairs and chairs and, brick sticks, pots, pans, and tin cans. It's completely ridiculous that we are expected to believe that, okay, if the girls can withstand this stuff, then the guys can never sell it again. So the guys have to do something even worse and even more extreme because they've already seen the girls take this. So therefore, I'm 275 pounds. I've got to fucking take a flat back bump to the floor off the goddamn roof of the cage. And then pretty soon, everybody's fucking paralyzed. So I love Bayley as a worker. Her heel promos are great. As a matter of fact, I noted that I think after her wrestling days are over, and sooner or later everybody's are, I'm not rushing her to retire, they should make her a manager. Because what do a lot of the girls have in common that get over there? They look good and they can do whatever they need to do in the ring, but they still aren't that great on the microphone. Why has there not ever been a top girl that has transitioned to becoming a fucking top manager for the next generation of women? Bayley could do that. Her promos are great. She knows how to work. She's not physically impressive like Rhea Ripley, just like fucking Bobby Eaton wasn't physically impressive like Sid. I'm sorry to equate Ripley and Sid there. But she can work. She's a good heel. She was a good baby face. She's got a good mind, apparently, for having matches. Whenever I've seen her have a match, not what this was. So I'm high on Bayley. And it just, I wouldn't have liked this match if the guys had it. Because it's just fucking gotten too ridiculous. To the point where by the time, and we'll talk about it in a little while, by the time Orton and McIntyre get it, they didn't even bother to use the ring. Orton and McIntyre, because now you've already had, this is the second cage match tonight. You're going to have another one. The girls are in the fucking cage. 130-pound fucking women. And there's more furniture and devices than at a Home Depot that's hidden, secreted under the ring. So when Bayley comes in and brings in the chair and Sasha Banks drop kicks it out and Bayley is freaking out. Oh my God, damn, like that was the last chair in the world. That was the last bullet for her gun. And here comes the zombies. And then within 10 minutes, they pulled the entire Home Depot out from under the ring. Within 90 seconds of this thing, they were out on the floor with a kendo stick. And then multiple kendo sticks. And then Sasha Banks pulled out a table. And Bayley had to sell while she set the table up. But then Bayley stops her and starts taking it down. Because then they have a tug of war over the table. They're wanting to set up a takeoff ramp. So they have to set it up, then take it halfway down, then fucking position it. Then Sasha Banks uses it as a takeoff ramp. And then Sasha Banks tosses in 2 more chairs. That's when I was like, well, why the fuck did Bayley give a shit that much about the one she just lost? They're taking bumps on the floor, into the cage, into the steps, the metal steps. This is the second cage match. I'm not trying to pick everything apart, but they did not have even Hell in a Cell matches like this until the recent few years when they lost the plot on this too. So I'm not trying to just take the piss out of everything, but my God, if this is what they're going to do, no wonder nobody's watching. Second cage match on a show, by the way, with no blood. It would soon become the third cage, 3 cage matches with no blood. It's like a low-fat Twinkie. If you can't eat the fat, don't eat the fucking Twinkie. If you're going to have a cage match and you don't have blood, don't have the fucking cage match. My God, they are literally risking a paralyzation with all this shit they're doing with this furniture that doesn't work with each other, and they can't just get a little color. If you asked me, and I was not noted for my propensity for bleeding like Abdullah the Butcher, but I would have got juice every night instead of doing any of the things that these guys are doing these days, taking bumps through this furniture. And they have 3 cage matches and no fucking blood. Girls are being thrown into the fucking steel structure that's supposed to be the most dangerous, unforgiving hell it's ever been coming. No blood. They set up a spot where they tried to suplex each other through kendo sticks that were propped between the cage and the steps. And then they foiled that so that the one girl boomeranged the other one through the kendo sticks. The old Al Costello fucking Fabulous Kangaroos boomerang. That's when I wouldn't like a guy having this fucking match. Girls is ridiculous. And knock him all you want to, but before Vince McMahon lost his mind, there would not have been a girls match like this on the fucking program in the Attitude Era. I don't think he would have gone this far in the Attitude Era. As soon as you mentioned the idea of okay, Vince, and then the girls are going to bridge a table between 2 chairs, get another chair, come off with the kendo stick, he would have had you drug tested. Then they did the deal where they stuck the chair in the corner and Sasha Banks got power bombed the back of her head into the fucking chair, which was less than that retired Sting. Seth Rollins gave him a buckle bomb. Sorry, neck, done. This girl was powerbombed with momentum the back of her head into a fucking metal chair in the corner. And it's a girl! And it didn't knock her out in a shoot or work way. These matches have gone from grudge fights to nonsensical stunt shows with furniture. Nobody would actually use any of these objects in these ways. Brian, you've seen street fights and grudge matches and old Tennessee brawls from the 70s, the 80s, the 90s. When did they start, instead of just there's a table sitting there and we accidentally fell through it, or there's a chair, pick it up and hit somebody with it? When did they start building pyramids and structures while the fucking guy has to lay there and sell?
ECW.
Well, that's another reason why that shit needs to be fucking buried and forgotten. Because it's fucking stupid. If a guy quits beating on me long enough to fucking set 3 or 4 chairs up and a table across it so he can try to put me on it, I'm just going to kick him in the balls. Which is what would have happened in every other... I guarantee you, everybody I got into business with, every big star that I ever came in contact with, if you tried to leave them selling for 45 seconds or a minute while you set up some furniture, they'd be on top of you, beating your ass and cuss you out in the locker room for burying them like that. Anyway, so then Bayley got duct tape and taped 2 kendo sticks together, and this took forever because she couldn't get the fucking tape unspooled. And she's biting it, and she's picking at it. So basically, at the point where she's trying to pick apart the duct tape, I decided if they were just going to stop the whole goddamn pretense of having a match to do the shop class projects, I was fast-forwarding to the finish. So I fast-forwarded, and I stopped when there were 2 chairs in the ring and a step ladder bridging them already set up, and Bayley face-bustered Sasha Banks face first into the ladder. Looked pretty good. So, of course, that couldn't be the finish because she's got to put Sasha Banks on the ladder. And Sasha Banks had to lay there. I timed it with the second hand on my watch. 45 seconds. While Bayley spray paints a fucking X on her. Like X marks the spot. So now after all this, they have to fucking be funny right before the finish. So X marks the spot. You're laying on the table. Just stay there. I'm going to get this chair and climb up to the top rope. And then when Bayley comes off, guess what? Who could have imagined? Sasha moves. Bayley with the chair hits the ladder. Boom. And that should have knocked her goofy, right? And then Sasha Banks runs and gives her the double knee, the Meteora, into the fucking buckle. And then grabs Bayley and gives her a belly-to-belly suplex onto the fucking metal ladder. Which I would once again rather give me a blade, I will get some color. I ain't taking that fucking bump. That's fucking stupid. Cover. 2 count. At that point, I wanted to make absolutely sure I saw no more whatsoever of this, so I fast-forwarded it until I saw the Hurt Business on the screen. Are we all surprised that everybody is fucking having surgery? That everybody is fucking hurt or injured or wearing braces or booking is disrupted or... nobody has a career until they're fucking 40. Girls. Oh, golly, if only me coming off the top rope and splashing a metal chair onto a fucking stepladder, being hit with a double fucking Meteora and belly-to-belly suplexed on the ladder. Thank goodness I was able to kick out at what was the fucking finish? A machine gun or a machete?
She put her in her submission hold. I don't know exactly what the name of it is. And then she also put a chair around Bayley's neck and started slamming her into the chair while in the submission hold, and Bayley gave up.
So you can call me sexist or misogynist or whatever all you want, but for the greater good of the business, for fuck's sake, none of the girls should be allowed to do any of this, and very few of the guys.
Well, that's what I was going to say. To me, it's not even about the issue of girls doing it. It's like you said, everyone's getting injured. Everyone's getting stupid injuries because it's happening from stupid stuff that shouldn't be done. I think that's the bigger issue than the fact that the girls were doing it. Because these two were actually over, unlike everyone else.
Well, but here's the, God damn it, I'm sorry, but let's just facts are facts. And Ronda Rousey was an anomaly. But even Charlotte, even Becky Lynch, they may sell the goddamn merchandise, but the meat of this matter is the fucking guys. And they've got their problems there because they don't have a champion. They had a champion when they had Brock Lesnar. Now they've got people that switch two belts around amongst each other. Brock Lesnar was the only fucking star they had because everybody knew he was the champion and everybody knew he was the guy. Now they've got people on the roster competing for two different titles. But the point is, the guys are the meat of the matter. And the guys are always going to be the backbone of this thing. And if there's going to be ridiculous risk taken and massive punishment dished out, it needs to be in the main events among the top guys. Doesn't even need to be allowed amongst the underneath guys, the middle card guys. This is fucking ludicrous. And that's why nobody gives a shit anymore, because this is every fucking match. And it started not only with that ECW horse shit, but also the goddamn Attitude Era 90s when both the WWF and WCW, the toy companies started putting folding chairs and toilet plungers and fucking garbage cans in the goddamn action figures. Like that is somehow supposed to be a part of wrestling. And these marks that have come along, that have gotten to business, and they are marks. They're complete marks that you can't smarten up, that have gotten into business and call themselves wrestlers, think that this is somehow what's supposed to be going on a regular basis instead of the ultimate blow off every once in a while. And that's why they're all getting injured more frequently, more seriously, and have shorter careers. And most of them still make less money, because unless you get the goddamn WWE spot, you're not making as much money as a lot of the guys were, adjusted for fucking modern dollars in the territories, for risking your fucking neck every night. Anyway, please go ahead and tell me your thoughts on the match now that I've completely shit all over it.
I agree with a lot of what you said, but with that said, I think it was the best thing on the whole show. It says a lot about the rest of the show. Bayley, I like both Bayley and Sasha Banks, and I think they both carry themselves like stars. I will say I do think there is some legitimacy to what you said about Sasha's size. She's a very slim, slender girl in there doing all this overly physical stuff, and in this match with weapons and everything else, that it is a little weird sometimes to see her. And when she wrestled Charlotte was so much bigger than her. But this is the fantastic world of professional wrestling where size doesn't matter.
Well, that's what she said.
I don't have too much more I can add to it. I thought it was the best thing on the show. I don't disagree with everything you said, but I still think it was the most enjoyable thing on this entire show, from the beginning to the end.
Maybe I shouldn't have disagreed with you, because if you just make that statement, it was the best thing on this show, we're both right. Anyway, the Hurt Business. Nice little promo by MVP. Shelton picked old Slapjack to be Bobby Lashley's opponent. And MVP dared Retribution to agree to no cornermen, just Lashley and Slapjack, and we'll put the U.S. title on the line. So that's... Who the fuck is Slapjack? Which one?
I forget.
He's not any of the people that we've been putting over, apparently, on NXT. I can't remember who they said he was, but point is, He takes a nice turnbuckle. I'll say that for him. Got shot off into the buckle, took that nice, but Lashley basically manhandled him and killed him until Slapjack took over and botched a drop kick and then didn't have a single clue as to how to get any heat on Lashley once he got him stopped. Did you notice that? It was like, and if green guys are like that, when a guy is so much bigger than you don't really know what to do to get it. But this was just like chlorophyll levels of green. Yeah. And then Lashley made a comeback and killed him. Boom. And then the heels, explain this to me. The heels, the rest of Retribution, attack Lashley. And by the time that the rest of Hurt Business got to the ring, Lashley had beaten all of them up. And then Mustafa Ali, who I guess is the leader of this band of merry pranksters, gets in the ring, but he sees all the Hurt Business and he just puts the brakes on and he powders out. So the worst heel got picked or the easiest heel, I guess, to beat got picked for the match. They beat him to death. The other heels jump in to try to get some heat. Lashley beats them all up single-handedly, and then they all run off. I thought this was supposed to be the wrestling version of ISIS that we were supposed to be scared of because they were a marauding band of lunatics that were trying to take the company over.
It is the worst invasion angle ever.
So they really still are the marauding band of lunatics trying to take the company over, but they got the shit kicked out of them and slunk off with their tail between their legs.
If I can say a positive, the Hurt Business come off like stars. MVP is fantastic on the mic. Shelton and Lashley and it's Cedric, right? Cedric's the other one in the group. Shelton and Lashley and Cedric they look like stars together. It looks like a major league faction. So that's good. I'll give that compliment.
Well, yeah. I'm not saying that they should have, just had their shit kicked out of them and their mouths pissed in while they were down there. But shouldn't it have taken the rest of the Hurt Business to come in and help Bobby for Bobby to beat up all four of them? if they're a top, that's what I'm saying. They do this stuff for 2 or 3 weeks. Where, oh my God, who are these people? They're going to be dangerous. My God, they're burning things up, setting things on fire. Oh, well, this one guy just kicked the shit out of them. And then they ran off.
Well, Jim, there's only one more match on this Hell in a Cell pay-per-view extravaganza, and I'm going to bet that it did nothing to change your view of how good or bad this show was.
Well, you would win that bet. That's why I'm not going to bet with you. But, folks, if you want to win your bets, and don't take money from me, take it from MyBookie. Because the folks at MyBookie, they will take a bet on anything. Folks, whether it's NFL, college ball, UFC, they're even taking action on the presidential race from what I hear. Anyway, the point is, if you want to ask for the best in advice in wrestling, you listen to Jim Cornette. If you want to place the best bets anywhere in sports, go to MyBookie. They offer action on everything from championship futures to NFL in-game live betting. The stuff that me and Brian Last don't know how to do. You're probably going to bet on the Mets every once in a while. I bet you will. Anyway.
Absolutely. New owner. I'm going to be betting on them more than ever before.
There you go. A lot of these professional sports franchises should have new ownership. Anyway, sign up at MyBookie today, folks. When you do, use our promo code DRIVE, D-R-I-V-E, the word DRIVE, to claim a deposit match dollar for dollar all the way up to $1,000. That means if you put in 100, they give you another 100, 200, and so on. It's a bonus designed to give you a little help and a head start on your winning season. Promo code DRIVE to claim your bonus when you make your deposit, whether it be the UFC cards, the presidential prop bets, all the major sports, and more. Sign up today to begin your winning season exclusively at MyBookie. And if you want to bet on whether I like this last match, you're an idiot because you already know the answer. Holy shit. The people I don't like on these shows. And I don't know. You would think just by accident they would figure out a way not to screw these matches up. Drew McIntyre and Randy Orton, two of the best workers in the business. They're grown adult men. They look like stars. They are stars. Orton's been on top for fucking 20 years. Drew McIntyre, as we've said, has really been the guy penalized by the no fan thing because he's had a great push and would have gotten over. He's worked his ass off. These are the two guys, if you were going to have a cage match, you would probably, on this modern roster, you'd want to have these two guys having it. If they could get a little blood, by the way, 3 matches in a row. Drew McIntyre bled from the mouth, and we'll get to that. But it's... Remember when they had Hell in a Cell matches up until the past few years ago? Didn't most of the match actually kind of take place in the ring? And then they would go outside as the garnish. And yes, I know Taker and Cactus went up to the roof. And now that that's been done, unless you can figure out a way to levitate off or a helicopter can come down and fucking grab you and take off, you shouldn't be on the roof anymore. But the third cage match, you had 2 grown adult men, the top guys, battling for one of the world titles, and they had less weapons than in the girls' match. Less furniture, less weapons. They were also in the ring less. They finally got in the ring to do spots with the chairs that the girls already did, hitting each other. Now I know why Lou Thez wouldn't work shows with the girls and the midgets. One of the girls or the midgets would do the Thez press, and Lou'd be pissed. But that's the thing. Here's the 2 top guys in the company in a cage match, hitting each other with chairs, and we saw girls doing that an hour and a half ago. And then they did multiple spots with the steps, still outside the ring. I actually, at this point, I fast-forwarded to see when they'd get back in the ring. And a couple minutes they did, and it got better. You actually had 2 of the most talented guys in the business taking bumps and doing moves on the stage instead of in the orchestra pit. And then McIntyre made a big fucking comeback. Boom, 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 boom. And did you see the belly-to-belly on Randy Orton through a table on the floor? Was that a heck of a bump, Brian Last? I ask you this, in all honesty. Nice-looking bump, right?
Nice looking.
Okay. Can you imagine what a pop that would have gotten if they'd have had the match in the ring and then gone out and done the shit on the floor, including that? Instead of starting on the fucking floor. Oh, and by the way, I forgot even the actual start. They blew the start. Do you remember that? Drew McIntyre makes his entrance. He's standing looking at the cage, and the floor camera's got the shot of him. And one of the cable pullers for the cameraman, for the other floor cameraman, in the background takes his fucking, he's got a hat and a mask on. He peels the hat off, and the floor camera instantly zoomed in on Orton so you could see him take the mask off, which blew the fucking whole point of the thing. You didn't know that it was Orton until he took the mask off, and they blew the fucking zoom. They went too early.
Did you see the package before the match?
Actually, I think I was at a fast-forwarding point through that also.
Apparently something we missed on, I think, Raw, is that they had a bunch of legends in a room. I think they were playing cards. It was like Shawn Michaels, Ric Flair, The Big Show. There was a 4th person. I don't remember who it was. And Randy Orton snuck in dressed like a janitor.
Oh, Jesus.
And put on night goggles.
Oh, God.
And shut off the lights.
Oh, boy.
So that even the cameraman who was in there couldn't see what happened.
Oh, hell.
And he laid everyone out, put the lights back on, and then when security and the agents are running in there to find out what happened, he was back as the janitor, and he had the hood over his head, and he was just like pointing something in there. But it was Randy Orton. It was all captured on film. Thank God it wasn't turned over to the authorities.
So I guess the floor guy blowing the zoom on the reveal of Orton before he had revealed himself wasn't the worst thing on it. But anyway, the whole thing was, as I said, they got back in the ring. They did some shit finally, or got in the ring finally. Then they did the belly-to-belly through the table. Boy, that would have been fucking a great spot if they hadn't seen 20 minutes of floor fighting. And then McIntyre starts doing the whispering in his ear. and which is gotten old already. And at this point, I wrote, how long does this have to be as a match? I mean, Orton gets bolt cutters, opens the cage door, walks out. This took forever. Then McIntyre runs down and gets him. They fight in the aisle. Then Orton climbs to the top of the cage. Why? I dare you to come up here, and McIntyre did. Why? Why would you climb a cage if the guy already on top of the cage is fucking mad at you? Because there's no way if he's not going to let you, you're going to get over the edge of the cage. So they climb up to the top of the cage, but neither one of these guys, I wrote this at the time before there was a bump, neither one of these guys has taken the cactus bump. So therefore, it's going to be a letdown. And why the fuck, unless you intend to take the cactus hip toss off the top of the fucking cell or something even worse, would you even want to go up there, because you're automatically raising false expectations and people are pissed off then when it doesn't look as good or better than Cactus's bump, which hopefully nothing ever will. I told him after he did it, I said, now that you've done that, please don't ever do that again. So, and I wrote, can they just have a wrestling match without reshooting Intolerance with the original runtime? The director's cut. Silent fucking movie fans in the audience are going to just shit themselves over that one. And then at a snail's pace, they fight on top of the cage. Orton nutshots McIntyre with the bolt cutters and climbs over the side to go down. McIntyre follows him. Neither one of them is Spider-Man now. And they're climbing on chain link, even though it was painted that obnoxious red. I hate the fucking red, by the way. It made my eyes sore.
Obnoxious red.
Obnoxious red. That was the shade of it. And then they get halfway down, and once again, people are saying, oh, Cornette, well, you want to take the bump? No, I don't want to take the bump from halfway. But to get on the fucking roof, diddle around, and then climb back down, that's like Heyman took the bump in the Memphis scaffold match. He said, Lawler said, you're going to take the bump off the scaffold like your boy Cornette did? Sure, King. And then he fucking climbed halfway up there and said, fuck it, and he took the bump from there, and that's why they fired him. But anyway, I digress.
That's why Lawler broke his jaw, wasn't it?
That's right. He broke his jaw first and then he fired him. But it was the broken jaw was a potato from the guy that never throws. But I'm the only manager that worked Memphis for any length of time. He didn't break his jaw at some point. Anyway, and then McIntyre takes the bump through the fucking table. Now, well, wait a minute. Oh, and while they were hanging on the side of the cage, exchanging weak shots with each other, because you can't fucking make it look good while you're hanging onto a cage or you can't get your fucking feet into the goddamn thing. While they were doing the hanging on the cage, doing that in slow motion, one of the announcers said, this is what this rivalry has come to. And I thought, this is what this business has come to. So McIntyre takes the fucking bump onto the announce desk and busts it, and boom, and it was an impressive looking bump. And the fake fans chanted, holy shit. And McIntyre's bleeding from the mouth. So Orton climbs down the rest of the way and whispers to him some more. And McIntyre is puking. There's not a finish yet here. Nobody's even trying to win. McIntyre's puking, trying to get up. Orton's waiting for him. Samoa Joe is at the only match that Samoa Joe didn't do commentary on was the match between the Samoans. Samoa Joe says, this is too much. You think it's too much. Then they got back in the ring. He's taken the bump from 15 feet through the table. Now they're back in the ring. Where's the chainsaw? Suddenly, the guy that took the fall off the side of the cage through the fucking table is bleeding from the mouth from internal injuries, has been puking at ringside and barely crawled into the ring. Fucking reversed the RKO effort into a backslide and got a 2 count, then hit the Claymore kick. And now McIntyre's trying to put Orton's lifeless carcass back in the ring because after the kick, he fucking rolled out on the floor. And I guess the internal injuries didn't, hamper him too much. He gets Orton back in the ring, then goes for a kick that he misses, and then Randy Orton hits the RKO. 1, 2, 3. Thanks for coming, Drew. Is the experiment over? They've just given up now?
I was surprised they went with that finish. I was disappointed. I said it a while back. I would give Drew McIntyre a long run with the title, which in this era of COVID wrestling wouldn't hurt them and actually would help give him credibility for when there are fans back in there. Give him a long, long run with the title. Instead, Randy Orton is now a 14-time champion.
And thanks for coming, Drew. They just did he not beat Brock Lesnar?
Yep. At WrestleMania.
In March. Here it is, October, and he's done a job already and dropped the title.
To Orton, who doesn't need a title.
And probably doesn't want to be carrying it around at extra weight in his bag.
And boy, those title belts look ugly. Just a big W. Ugly.
Ugly. Well, I don't... Any closing thoughts on that contest?
I hated that match. When Randy Orton climbed up to the top of the cage, I'm thinking, okay, go in the ring. Like, what reason do you have to go up there? There's no incentive. Okay, let's have a let's have a stalemate. You go up there, and I'll be here in the ring, and we'll see what happens. We'll bring this pay-per-view to a halt. I didn't like it. I didn't like this whole event. We didn't even talk about the commentators.
I don't listen because it's always this. It sounds the same kind of thing. And I like Samoa Joe.
He's all right. Michael Cole may be the most counterproductive commentator in wrestling history. And what I mean is, I think he takes away from every broadcast. His style is so fake. And you could say whatever you want about every other commentator in wrestling. Ian Riccoboni and Caprice Coleman, fantastic. They seem genuine. Jim Ross is not what he used to be, but he seems like a real guy. Excalibur's goofy, but he doesn't just talk to the people at home like they're children.
No, he talks to people at home like they're marks in their basement, but at least they're adult marks.
Michael Cole is so counterproductive. Everything he says comes across as forced and disingenuous. I think Corey Graves would be a lot better. In fact, he was in NXT. I was going to say, I'm not a big Corey Graves fan, but he'd be a lot better if he wasn't sitting next to Michael Cole. And everyone Michael Cole trains talks in that same fake way. It makes you tune out the commentators. It makes you not want to hear the commentators. He's just yelling at you the whole match like you're a child. I don't like him as a commentator in general, but when I really thought about just how counterproductive he is to WWE, he is awful. He is the worst commentator maybe in wrestling history because of the influence he has on everyone else who has come into WWE since he arrived. Just garbage.
Kevin Dunn loves him.
Kevin Dunn's another asshole.
You mean to tell me that the fine, upstanding wrestling fan that is Kevin Dunn, you're trying to tell me that Bucky Beaver is an asshole? I take issue with that, sir.
I can't wait for WWE to be sold and for there to be widespread changes in that company. I really can't. It is lost at sea right now. We could say whatever we want about AEW. Every time we go from AEW's awfulness, and there'll never be any excuse for that dinner debonair douchebag garbage. Never any excuse for that. But every time we go from their awfulness and their broadcast and the amateur hour that's on their show to what is supposed to be the major league of professional wrestling, it's a sorry state of affairs in WWE. That show is rotten. They have no stars. They don't know how to create stars. There's bad comedy all over the place. The announcers talk to you like children. WWE treats you like you're a child. There's no incentive to watch again. It's a bad promotion. It's really, really bad. And that's why so many people want to have hope for AEW. Because this Complete and utter trash is what's up against AEW. And it's not good. And until Vince McMahon's out of the picture, this is what it's going to be. There's going to be no 6-month run of, wow, things have been great for the last few months. I can't believe this. Will they keep it up? No. If you get 2 good episodes in a row, people lose their minds. No one's losing their minds because it doesn't happen. Every now and then someone will write to us and say, oh, I wish you guys had watched Raw. One of the hours was really good. It's everything else. It's a rotten promotion. And as someone who loves the stock market, everyone should dump their WWE stock. Why put any money into that crap?
Ladies and gentlemen, you listen to the Drive-Thru for unvarnished opinions, and the WWE just got shellacked by Brian Last.
Did I say anything?
Not a thing.
That you either don't agree with or isn't true?
Untrue, questionable, none of it. No, you were pretty much spot on.
It's awful. It's awful. They have so much money. They make money hand over fist, even with all the layoffs, which were unnecessary. They have tons of cash on hand. They make tons of money. They have a giant archive. They have some really talented people working there. And they blow it every chance they get. It's such a horrible show. I mean, I'm talking about the pay-per-view. Anytime I watch any of the television shows, every Friday, not every Friday, but some Fridays, if I'm flipping through the channels, because there's nothing on, I'll spend a few minutes on Fox and see what's on SmackDown. It's awful. Raw's unwatchable. NXT has gone downhill quick over the past year. They don't know how to make new stars. They drive off a lot of their stars. It's bad.
Sometimes they drive off some of their stars in the trunk of a car.
Vince McMahon wrestling in 2020 is awful. And I'd like to see someone there with some guts that tells him it's time to stay home. You're hurting everything. Everything you built, you're hurting. Jerk off.
Brian, I've known you for a long time now. I'd like to suggest that maybe you might want to speak to somebody.
Oh, yeah, who?
Well, I'll tell you, the folks at BetterHelp, they can match you up with a licensed professional therapist online and almost instantly. I mean, it's a quick process, and it's done securely as well. So maybe that, Brian, if you had somebody to talk to vent, to get your frustrations out, to get your emotions out, to help reconcile your thoughts before you take matters into your own hands. Something like that. But folks, if you don't have the problem of watching WWE program like almost everybody in the country these days and in the world, but you do have other problems and you want somebody to talk to that's not as filled with animosity as the great Brian Last, the folks at BetterHelp can help you. You can start communicating with a licensed professional therapist in under 48 hours. A broad range of expertise available. Obviously, nobody wants to go out these days in the midst of a pandemic. This is all online, but as well, these services may not be available in your areas if you were to try to find them. But this is available for clients worldwide. You can log into your account anytime, send messages to your counselor, schedule weekly video or phone sessions. They make it easy. BetterHelp wants you to start living a happier life today. You can go on their website, BetterHelp, HELP, BetterHelp.com. Read the testimonials. They're posted from folks all around the world. And you can visit BetterHelp.com/drive and join the over 1 million people taking charge of their mental health with the help of an experienced professional and get 10% off your first month's services at BetterHelp.com/drive. Brian, I think you need to make the phone call. I'm sensing unresolved angst and hostility and anxiety between you and Vince McMahon.
You know, this brings to mind a good point. Considering the current state, the very sad state of professional wrestling, there should be wrestling therapists. Someone you can call and vent to and get it all out who actually know a thing or two about wrestling. You could talk to them about the booking problems you have. about the bad comedy and the song and dance routines, and they'll understand. Wrestling therapists. I think this is a great business.
No, hold on here, because here's the problem. The only people that would call about that would be the retired wrestlers having to watch it, because the current wrestlers are pretty much all working under the sadly mistaken opinion that wrestling is in some kind of renaissance and better than it's ever been. That's what you see on Twitter.
No, you misunderstood what I said. I'm not talking about a therapist for wrestlers. I'm talking about a wrestling therapist for wrestling fans.
Well, now there you go. Somebody to pour your heart out and explain why that your favorite thing is being embarrassed and made a mockery of on a weekly and daily basis on national television. How
That's
once
right.
a fine and proud hobby of yours has become a dirty secret and something you can't even enjoy because of the amount of dreck that you have to sift through to get to what you were watching the product for to begin with.
I just hate it. I hate it so much. Well, what are you going to do about it? I'm going to watch it every week and write about it on the internet.
Hey, we try to take some of that burden off people. That's why we watch, so you won't have to. Because we tell you everything that goes on.
Well, let's get some questions here on this drive-through this week.
I've got a question for you.
Oh, okay.
Did you see Svengoolie this past Saturday night?
I missed it this week. What was on?
Mighty Joe Young.
Oh, really? Get out of here.
Mighty Joe Young, for the folks who don't know, was the second wave of giant gorilla movies. First was King Kong and Son of Kong in 1933, and then Kong didn't get any sequels, and in 1949 they produced Mighty Joe Young. Willis O'Brien, who did the special effects on King Kong, was involved in this, and Ray Harryhausen. This is one of the first big movies that he worked on, and he did assisting work to Willis O'Brien for the the stop motion animation and the photography and everything. But and our friend Svengoolie, of course, is on MeTV, 8 o'clock Eastern time on Saturday nights with the fine horror movies that he airs. But you know why I'm bringing Mighty Joe Young up.
The wrestling connection, I assume.
You are correct, sir. Mighty Joe Young wasn't as big as King Kong. He was only about 25 feet tall, probably, according to, the difference between him and his lovely owner. But he had a tug of war in the movie with 10, well, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I thought there was 10. Who'd I leave out? I've only got 9 names down. Anyway, nevertheless, I tell a lie. The point is, they bring, imagine this, they find Mighty Joe Young in Africa. They bring him to the United States. They make him a nightclub attraction. Drunks cause trouble and chaos ensues, right? It's a big monkey movie. So when he's in the nightclub, they're having a tug of war with Mighty Joe Young against 10 of the, as they build him, the strongest men in the world who were all pro wrestlers. And the first time that I saw this movie was on Channel 4, WTTV out of Bloomington, Indiana, the independent station that I saw Dick the Bruiser's TV show on when I first discovered wrestling. And the deal was every Friday and Saturday night, you got to see science fiction theater on Friday nights. And on Saturday nights, you got to see Sammy Terry, followed by Bruiser's TV show. And I don't know what their schedule was back then. And I think they were doing some kind of local high school or college Indiana sports on Saturdays, because Sammy Terry might be off the air at 12:30, might be off the air at 2:15. You didn't know what the fuck was going to go right. It was floating. But so Bruiser's show would come on late at night, and I always wondered how they were able to get, such big crowds in Indianapolis for these shows when the TV was on at 12 or 1 or 2 in the morning. I later found out that the real Indianapolis TV airing was Channel 6, a network affiliate, in the daytime on Saturday or Sunday, and this was a rerun on Channel 4. But anyway, I digress. When Channel 3 went off the air in Louisville, that's when the signal on Channel 4 would come in real good before I got my big antenna. So I saw the last half of some of the most classic horror movies and science fiction movies ever before I ever saw the first part of them, because you'd either join science fiction theater or cemetery in progress, right? And Mighty Joe Young, I actually got to see when I was 10 years old. I just started watching Bruiser's wrestling show. And when this scene came up, I popped because one of the wrestlers was Sam Menaker. And Sam Menaker at the time was Dick the Bruiser's booker and TV announcer. And my God, I now know with my grown-up eyes, before I was smart to the business, I didn't. But I should have. Sam Menaker was, as I said, not only the announcer, but also the booker. And I know that now, not only because I'm smart to the business, but also because he was the second biggest babyface on the television program next to Bruiser. He was always working an angle with Heenan. He was always he was a very babyface announcer, and he wasn't going to let the heels get over anything because Sam Menaker was a big star in wrestling in the 40s, and to Sam in the 70s, he was still a big star in wrestling. So it was like Ed Whalen if Ed Whalen had been a wrestler and a strongman. That's how little heat you could get on Sam Menaker, right? But so Menaker was one of the wrestlers that had the tug of war, and it was all guys that were working the Los Angeles territory there in the late 40s, because they were the ones that, got to call from the studios, and also they needed the strongmen type. So it was not only Menaker, Sammy Stein, who was a big babyface of the time, Killer Carl Davis, who was a big heel, Rasputin, the Mad Monk, Bomber Kulke, who actually was one of the crewmen. Do you remember this on Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea? In the mid 60s, I think he was for several seasons. Man Mountain Dean, who was one of the first big guys before Haystacks Calhoun, but now when you look at him, geez, he probably went like 380, and they're saying this 500-pound Man Mountain Dean. They were exaggerating, but human beings weren't that big back then, so it was, remarkable. The Swedish Angel, not the French Angel, not Maurice Tillet, but what was the Swedish Angel's name?
Oh, was it Olaf?
Phil Olafson. The guy, what a fucking head, huh? Do you remember what he looked? His head was literally like 2 feet tall and only 6 or 8 inches wide. His chin to his forehead would have covered the upper body of most normal people. So, because he had the pituitary gland issue, but anyway, they were presenting these guys as strong men, but everybody else was like, Menaker tore a phone booth in half, or phone booth. Let me try this again. Menaker tore a phone book in half because he used to do strongman shit. He did that with the fucking Heenan rivalry. He tore a phone book, and then Bobby'd tear 6 pages, and all the other guys are lifting these weights or snapping these, I think Man Mountain Dean bent a horseshoe or whatever, because that was a trick that he would do. The Swedish Angel had no tricks, right? Because he wasn't really a strong man. He was just a big, ugly fuck. So they had him break an obviously gimmicked 2x4 over his own head. And then the last one, and Wee Willie Davis, who became a sheriff's deputy here in Louisville, worked for the sheriff's department back in the 50s and 60s, and briefly promoted wrestling here in the late 50s, was the guy who got in the fight with Johnny Valentine in the locker room with the slapjacks when Bobby Heenan made his first date here in Louisville. And Primo Carnera, who had been the obviously heavyweight boxing champion, but was making more money now doing wrestling. He was one of the top gate attractions at the time. And it's a fun segment. But that was so cool. When I was a kid, I got to see those guys, and it was like, this is from another era, from another time period, right? Those so far back in the past. And then I realized that movie was made in 1949. I saw it for the first time in 1972. That's 23 years. So it's the same thing. In the pre-video era, things aged quicker. You couldn't just pull up a VHS or go on the internet and find video of stuff, so it seemed like it was longer. That's the same thing now as us watching the Montreal Screwjob 23 years ago, but it seemed like that these guys were from a whole goddamn other historical era. Isn't that weird? Or maybe not.
I remember I saw something once. I can't remember where it was or what exactly the figures were, but it was something like the the period of time between, maybe it was Buddy Rogers and Pat O'Connor to Hogan versus Andre, compared to like that period of time from Hogan versus Andre to the current day. And it's crazy how much wrestling changed and then how much it stopped changing.
Yeah, you're right, because it has stopped changing. It's all the same shit now, but it's not changing. Yeah, okay, Rogers and O'Connor to Hogan and Andre was 26 years. And then Hogan and Andre, 26 years forward, would be 2013. And doesn't look anything like either of the two things beforehand. At least Hogan and Andre, that era still looked like Rogers and O'Connor, but in color and with tighter ropes and some more high spots. And the difference from Hogan and Andre to 2013, the whole goddamn thing just fell apart and changed. Part of it, I still say, has to do with people, the ease in which people were allowed into our industry, which didn't start happening until after Hogan and Andre. Once that any just basically jack off the street could do anything in this business, wrestle, referee, manage, promote, book, camera, whatever, the rate of ascension into Shitsville entered warp speed, didn't it?
Yeah, I don't know how much of it is people being allowed onto shows versus people just being trained. I mean, once you...
Well, no, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. There was... If you wanted to get trained, and you even had money to pay somebody to train you until the 90s, it was still going to be a tough fucking job to find someplace. You'd have to move. You'd have to search. Now, that's what I'm saying. The ease in which anybody can do anything in this business, whether they're qualified, trained, know what they're doing or not, has every time that accelerates, the descent into the overall shit that we mostly see today intensifies. And speaking of, by the way, of dated references, here's something else. People were on Twitter at me when we just eviscerated the song and dance two-step that our boys did the other night. Well, way to go, Cornette. You're such a boomer. Like, that is even aren't we tired of that already? Isn't that what every idiot says? Okay, boomer. But you're such a boomer. You're making all these references about the Jackie Gleason show and the Carol Burnett show. Well, that's dated. That was the point, you fucking idiot. Name the last fucking highly rated musical comedy variety show on network television in the last 50 years. That's what they were doing. It came straight off the goddamn Carol Burnett or the Jackie Gleason show from 1966. And I'm the one that's making all the dated references. They're out there doing a fucking Rat Pack number like Steve and Edie.
All right, let's get some questions.
What do you got?
This first one was sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Rice in Wales, United Kingdom. What are your thoughts on the rumors that Roman Reigns' tribal chief run is leading to a match against The Rock at WrestleMania? How do you feel more generally about bringing back stars from the past for these short runs? I know that diehard wrestling fans have been very against it over the last couple of years, particularly with Goldberg, but also to a lesser extent with The Rock's run back in 2012 and 2013.
Oh, horse shit. If The Rock showed up at a wrestling event in 2021 every single person that could fucking get to it or watch it or track it down or buy the video or camp out in the parking lot and masturbate until they got to see him in person would do so. This is one of the biggest fucking stars in the world and the biggest mainstream star that pro wrestling has ever created. And everybody would cream themselves and it would be a great match because he wouldn't do anything that he couldn't do. He wouldn't commit to doing anything that he wasn't sure that he was fully capable of doing. He would be motivated beyond measure to put fucking Roman Reigns over, and I'm pretty sure that would be the only finish that he would agree to. He wouldn't come back to beat the guy. And that would probably be the biggest match they could ever fucking have. Who could possibly find fault with having Roman Reigns versus The Rock at WrestleMania?
Usually the guys who find fault with that are the other guys on the card who don't understand that it's a benefit to them to have someone of that level of star back with the group for a short period of time even, because of the attention it'll bring. Instead, they're upset because they're stealing a spot from someone else who's a regular all year round.
Well, but actually, it's not a benefit to them anymore. It used to be a benefit when they sold tickets and pay-per-views, because then if you were in the middle of a card that was on pay-per-view and had 1 million buys, you made more than if you were in the main event of a fucking show that did 200,000 buys, whatever the fuck. The point is, now that the network has come along and cannibalized everybody's royalties for video, and there is no such thing as pay-per-view anymore, so I guess basically they just get paid on the video game and whatever the fuck. It's not really a financial benefit to have a big star in the main event anymore because the guys are just getting paid whatever the fuck they get paid. So that's another reason why modern wrestling's economics sucks compared to the old days, because back then you had incentive. However, having said that, you're still a complete fucking idiot if you don't want to be on The Rock's card rather than the main event of your own. You're a fucking moron. Because yes, there will be a lot of attention and maybe some more people will see you. But the thing is, if you're in the main event and it draws, then you look like shit. But if you're on the card and The Rock draws, we know that, then, you know, it may look good for you. I don't know. The point is, any sane wrestling promoter and any sane wrestling fan would want The Rock versus Roman Reigns at WrestleMania or at any other show, because any other show that it was booked on would automatically become bigger than WrestleMania.
What do you think of the idea that potentially the booking could be leading towards that tribal chief battle at WrestleMania?
Well, I mean, you know, I don't think that they're specifically leading to that one thing, because there would obviously, if they can't get Rock to do it, whether it's an insurance thing with his movies or whatever the case, he got hurt before the one time, and movie studios are cautious about that type of thing. If he is in between any commitments where he can do that, then I'm sure he would be open to it. And we all know he keeps himself in good shape, even though ring shape is a different thing, but he could get there. I mean, this fucking guy, this type of guy that cures cancer on his lunch hour in his spare time. He's an overachiever. But I think Heyman is smart enough to realize that the whole tribal chief thing makes sense. And as we said, until they went sideways with the dramatic nature of the presentation, the fight they were having over it was good. That's something they can do anyway. And that's something that they can sell Roman Reigns as the tribal chief and the whole 9 yards and make the family involved. And then if The Rock was to come, that would be the icing, the gravy, the whole 9 yards. But they would still be doing this anyway, because it makes sense as a way to get this guy over as a badass and a heel. So it just because it's leading to that doesn't mean that's the only reason they're doing it, or that they know for a fact it's leading to that. This has the happy coincidence, probably because Happy Heyman, the jovial Jew, is involved, of being able, that would be just a little bonus, but it's still a good fucking piece of business they're doing.
Hey, what would you think about the idea of the Usos, of continuing the Uso Roman Reigns thing, where they have to get revenge, so they bring in the black sheep of the family, Jacob Fatu?
Well, you know, actually, I guess at this point, I'm wondering if I just didn't fucking make up a gimmick for him that may be the truth, because everybody else in the whole family's employed in one place, and then he's over there at MLW. That's as soon as I saw this guy, I'm like, okay, I can't believe that somebody hasn't seized on this. And we mentioned that some of these guys have records with the government that prevent them from sometimes going to Canada or whatever. But let's face it, everybody has mistakes in their background or whatever. I would earnestly be looking for a way, while this guy's still around and his window is still open, to make some money with Jacob Fatu, because, like I said, all the Samoans can work and the whole family, but I see a bigger upside in Jacob Fatu as a monster beast, badass heel that becomes a babyface eventually than I do in the Usos, and I'm not trying to knock them, but they're a nice tag team and a couple of nice workers. This fucking guy is different, and you can make money with him because he creates chaos. He's got a fucking intensity when he's let go. That just the times I saw him at MLW, I was astonished that Gary Hart could have retired on this fucking guy. Bobby Heenan, any great fucking manager. J.J. Dillon. I digress. Yeah, Jacob Fatu, that would be interesting. He'd get, but now see, here's the thing. You wouldn't put him in the Roman Reigns spot, because Jacob Fatu is an ugly badass, not a pretty badass. Roman Reigns is a pretty badass. He's good looking in a masculine badass way. He's got the movie star gimmick. Jacob Fatu looks like the guy that would be ripping your fucking carotid artery out in an alleyway somewhere. So you wouldn't use Jacob Fatu as a face of a company as they tried to with Roman Reigns as a babyface, or even now as a heel. You would use him as a monster like a Kamala, except he could be much more real life. You wouldn't obviously have him fucking eating raw fish and, talking island gibberish, but you would update the threat of the guy that speaks very little, has somebody pulling his strings, and is, as long as he does what he's supposed to do, he doesn't go back to fucking prison. You can make $1 million with this fucking guy. Is it surprising when I talk about the fact that just because one guy's great and the other guy's great, you would have to use them for two different things? Does anybody actually get that? None of the writers get it, but maybe the fans get it.
I don't know who gets what anymore. Well, here's a question sent to CornyDriveThru at gmail.com from Rob Fish in Newcastle, United Kingdom. Rob, you could stop sending your questions now, because he sent this one about 40 times. He recently heard a conversation with Jim Ross, and in a nutshell, he said, in regards to your AEW reviews, every time you criticize AEW, you criticize him, which he takes personally, and that you've become one of the most over heels in wrestling, despite not being on national TV currently. Rob wants to know, do you still have a good relationship with Jim Ross? And have you heard any of his recent comments about your criticisms of AEW?
Well, I heard that one that you just mentioned, because I didn't hear it. I saw it quoted on Twitter or whatever, and some of the websites that picked up on it. And don't make me feel bad. No, JR and I have not had any crosswords. We don't speak frequently these days because I'd have to say things to him I just don't want to say. But I prefer to look at it like I'm saying the things that he knows are true and he just can't, because he's trying to be professional and assist these chuckle fucks and give them the benefit of his knowledge and wisdom, which they're apparently not taking on a lot of this shit. But no, honestly, I don't feel bad, because I don't think that JR should take any of my criticism personally, because you and I know as well as anybody else that most of the things that I am criticizing, if JR was writing the show and hiring the talent instead of calling the show, those things wouldn't be happening to begin with, because he wouldn't put up with them either. So I don't feel like I'm criticizing him. I didn't say anything about the commentary. That's the least of my worries. They could have fucking a mime do commentary on that show, and it would still be the least of the problems that they have. After all, he's sitting next to Excalibur, so JR and Tony both sound like fucking Howard Cosell and John Cameron Swayze next to that. See, I try to get these old references in.
You're out of touch, old man.
I'm out of touch, I'm out of time, but I'm out of my head.
That song came out in 1981. You're out of touch. You're
out of touch. I'm out of time. But anyway, no, I mean, JR is nicer and more diplomatic, and also he is more able to compartmentalize these things. If his job is to announce, then he's going to announce. He will give his opinions when they're asked. He won't yell at people or force the issue down their throat. But once again, I would say 80% or maybe a little more of the things that I say are things that in a complete vacuum, if you just ask Jim Ross, what do you think about this or that, without any personal relationship with these people or business relationship or connection with them, he'd say the same thing, just not as colorfully as I do.
All right, our next question. This next question, Jim, is one that several people have sent in this morning. I'm going to read this one from Twitter using the hashtag CornyDriveThru from the Jewish Maestro. What do you think of this alleged leaked payroll document from AEW? Now, this is something that made the rounds. If it wasn't a year ago, it was several months back. I think it was before the pandemic. And you can comment on it, Jim. I mean, it's completely ridiculous.
I know. And why did it? Because I'm like you, I saw it on Twitter and knew that it was a gimmick months ago. Why is it back in the news? It's the same exact picture of the same exact
fake document.
Yeah, fake document.
I've never seen an invoice like this in my entire life.
Well, yeah. So, but what stirred it up again?
Oh,
that they're just now finding it.
There's a certain goof who's desperate for people to check out his videos. So either he was too stupid to know that this wasn't legitimate, or he was just hoping people would talk about it and he would get some desperate views.
But he presented it as if it was legitimate.
From what I don't watch his stuff because I care about my brain cells.
But anyway, what I understand, people are taking it seriously.
Yeah.
Okay, we will explain. As a matter of fact, can you pull that document up?
I have it right here.
Okay, because I'm going to explain the flavor here, and then you can read it and we can read the itemization. But basically, this is supposedly an internal financial document from AEW on bills or accounts that they have to pay.
Confidential.
It says to make sure it's secret. They got confidential. It's confidential to our entire accounting department that these are the bills that we're paying. And honestly, I give them credit for the idea, whoever mocked this up. And if they'd have just had any clue about any kind of business and or what you would pay people, they could have done this where it was half-ass legitimate looking. But instead, they've made these amounts so ludicrous that it's obvious that it's bullshit, and everybody who knows anything about what you would pay anybody knows that this would be ridiculous, correct? If I basically phrase all that?
Yeah, I don't understand why anyone would think this is legitimate. I mean, I think part of it is, I'm not someone who believes that Dave Meltzer's on AEW's payroll.
No, we established last week on The Experience, he's paying them to mention his name so much.
That's ridiculous too. But I'm not a believer that he's on their payroll. You've seen it. There are people that believe it. So something like this emerges, and although it's ridiculous on its face, there are people who will take this and hold it in the air and say, you see? Evidence! Evidence! This April confidential accounts payable invoice says it.
All right, well, read the items on this confidential paperwork.
Now, once again, I'm assuming this, because it says April, that this fake invoice is supposed to be just for the month of April.
Yes.
Payment processing Automated Retail Systems, $803.98. Coke Solutions, $520.23.
Wait a minute, is that the soft drink or the drug that they're helping you find solutions to?
Maybe backstage party favors. Who knows? Anthony Rezko, whoever that may be, $693.43.
He sounds like a teamster. Talk to Rezko. He'll get it taken care of.
And then payments today. That's what it says. Payments today.
Well, every accounting internal inter-office thing has a payments today column, doesn't it?
$489.70. Now we get to the section for public relations and advertising. Brian Alvarez, $89,000. Once again, for the month of April. Total Divas Entertainment, $42,300.
Is there actually a company named Total Divas Entertainment?
I don't know. I mean, I'm guessing maybe because it's under public relations and advertising and thinking there's maybe a tad of integrity with whoever concocted this. Maybe it's like a Twitter account or a website of some sort.
All right.
The Voices of Wrestling, $109,000. Monterey Peninsula Talent, $203,000. Westwood One, $333,400.
Westwood with the folks that do podcasts. Westwood One.
Well, it started, of course, as a radio syndication network. Big competitors of Bob Meyrowitz's DIR.
But they're spending $300,000 a month with these folks.
$333,400 to be exact. Yenta Bixenspan, $10,000.
That's where I knew it was bullshit, because if Styles Bitchley, that little fucking crumb-grubbing fucking rugrat, anybody ever paid him $10,000, he'd be fucking screaming about it from the rooftops.
Yeah, plus he would drool all over you for just $500. $10,000. But anyway.
Just leave your car window open. You'll get a fucking lap full of drool.
You know, he's denying that happened.
I remember you telling me about it years ago.
Hey, I guess he didn't count for the fact that, and I didn't know about this either, that my ex-girlfriend had a contemporaneous journal entry where she wrote all about it. Maybe we'll have to post that. But anyway, moving on. Facebook, 80,000.
Yeah, that's why she's your ex-girlfriend, because you know about that journal, but that's another story for a different time.
She's the one who told me, actually, when I asked her if she remembered any of this. $80,600.
To who?
Facebook. Something Awful, LLC, $12,000. I don't know what that is. David Meltzer, $207,100. Wade Keller, $75,000.
Like anybody outside of Bellevue would give Wade Keller $7.50.
No, 75.
No, I'm saying $7.50.
Oh.
Like anybody outside of fucking Bellevue, outside of a mental institution. What would these payments, they don't have that many subscribers, for fuck's sake. For $1 a subscriber. Here you go. All right, keep going.
Instagram, $30,000. Twitter, $320,900.
How would you spend $320,000 on Twitter?
I don't know, because even if you wanted to sponsor your tweets, there's no way it would cost anywhere near that.
But yeah, if they were spending $300,000 and something on Twitter, wouldn't you look at their Twitter and they'd have 89 million fucking followers?
Yes, you would think. But Russian bots aren't the same price they used to be, Jim.
The whole bot market's gone to hell.
Lawrence Sinclair, I don't know who that is, $24,000 a month. And finally, from the public relations and advertising section, TikTok, $111,200. And then, of course, finishing up this bullshit invoice, refreshments, Now, important to note, Coke Solutions wasn't under refreshments. It was under payment processing. But anyway.
Okay, well, maybe in that case, it was the Bolivian kind.
American Water? Maybe you should ask Bill Ponderosa. American Water, $3,404.09.
That's a lot of water.
Healthy You Vending, $16,603.90. And finally, Poland Springs, What It Means to Be from Maine, $798.45.
Now, wait a minute. Polish water is from Maine? What do they have over in Poland?
No, it's
lobsters?
It's Poland Springs, not Polish water.
Well, I thought Poland Springs was in Poland.
Poland Spring is in Maine.
Why don't they call it Bangor Springs?
Why don't they call it Moreland Springs?
Why don't they call it Nantucket Springs? You know, I once knew a woman from Nantucket.
I once heard Lanny Poffo tell that story.
So what was the grand total on these expenditures?
There is no grand total, and I have not added these up with my calculator.
But it seems like they're spending a lot of money.
They certainly seem to be spending a lot of money.
Maybe that's why they're cutting costs on talent.
Can you imagine people believe this is legitimate?
I got to paraphrase, it wasn't about this subject, but it was definitely the same words. If you gave Dave Meltzer $200,000 a month, to quote Dennis Condrey about a young lady one time, he'd be dropping down, sucking everything in sight for half of that.
All right. Well, I guess with that, we'll move on to the next topic here.
Would you like to move on? You know, listen here. If you'd like to just shut me out, if you don't want to listen to the comments that I make and the things that I have to say, well, I got a way that you can shut the whole world out. It's what, as a matter of fact, I've come along in technology to be able to shut the world out because I wasn't going deaf quite quick enough. So I've got to have noise canceling earbuds. And folks, the wireless earbuds from Raycon, the everyday E25 earbuds are the best ones yet. 6 hours of playtime, seamless Bluetooth pairing, more bass. You always need more seafood in your diet. A more compact design and a noise-isolating fit. You can be wearing these, people be screaming at you. You don't know anything about it. You can be wearing these. Don't walk across the street wearing these everyday E25 earbuds from Raycon. You will get your ass run down because you will not hear that train, that car, or even that motorcycle. Folks, they're stylish and discreet, no wires, no stems. These things, they stick right in your ear. You can't lose them, but they stick right in your ear and they sound like $1 million. They sound better than the premium stuff that's twice the price of these fine earbuds. And they've got a 45-day free return policy, so you can make sure they're the pair of wireless earbuds for you. If you do try them out and you don't want them, then you can send them back 45 days, free return. Wipe the earwax off first, if you would, please. And folks, for a limited time, get 15% off your order at buyraycon.com. That's B-U-Y, Raycon, R-A-Y-C-O-N, buyraycon.com/JCE. Buyraycon.com/JCE, 15% off the wireless earbuds. Do it now while this deal's still running. They can't do this all month. It could end at any time. You never know with these people. Take advantage of them while they're willing to be taken advantage of, and screw them out of a set of these fine earbuds as soon as you possibly can.
Actually, there's another listing here I forgot on this invoice. $600,000 Raycon, so they don't have to listen to Jim Cornette.
Well, there you go. The whole company now is outfitted with noise-canceling earbuds so they don't have to listen to me tell the truth about them. And you, folks, whether you don't want to listen to your wife, your kids, your husband, whoever you don't want to listen to, block them out with the Raycon earbuds.
Let's get our next question here. This was sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from David Diamonte. My question is about professional wrestlers and their political affiliations. I recently saw on Twitter a photo that showed Chris Jericho donated $3,000 to Donald Trump's campaign during the month of October. I have been a massive fan of Jericho during his WCW, WWE, and the first half of his AEW run while he was still champion. However, hearing that he could support a man like Trump has absolutely ruined him for me. My question is a two-parter. Does hearing this information make you dislike Jericho even more? And do you have any stories about wrestlers and their insane political beliefs?
Well, answer the first question. It doesn't make me dislike Chris more because I never, even with all the shit he's been doing, I haven't, till I heard about this, disliked him as a person. I am astonished. I am shocked. I am dismayed. I am disappointed that he's doing this shit to the wrestling business when he doesn't have to. And that he attained a status where he could go where he wants to go and do what he wants to do. And instead of trying to fucking make these guys respect the business and make them achieve and excel and or be honest with them when they shouldn't be in the business at all, guy sticks his hands in his pockets or dwarf dong sucker, he's fucking going along with it for a fucking paycheck because he has to know that it's the shits. That's why I've been disappointed, but it didn't make me dislike him. It made me wonder what the fuck he's thinking and why he has to do it, and why that nobody can just take some type of stand of self-respect of what's going on in the wrestling business and say, if they want me to be involved, they're going to have to do it right, or I'm going to put my foot down and I'm not going to be. If more guys would do that, the guys with names, the guys with the ability to, maybe you could nip it in the bud. Now I'm like you. I just saw this on Twitter today, knowing that he's giving money to Donald Trump. Yes, now I do dislike him because I've got fucking rules and I got standards, and he's fucking goddamn backed me into a corner. Because the same thing is, do you know who I blocked on Twitter like day before yesterday?
I don't know if you want me to guess. I don't know.
Guess.
Brian Armstrong.
No. Harry Smith.
Oh, really?
Harry Smith, who British Bulldogs, Davy Boy Jr. And all I did was I turn on Twitter, and there I see a tweet from him apropos of nothing that I knew of that was a conversation. He just tweeted, well, I just want to make sure everybody knows who I'm voting for, and tweeted a picture of a fucking Trump 2020 fucking, I think it was either a cap or a mask or a sign or something, or imagine that, a Trump 2020 mask. And so I had to write back. I said, I hate to do this because we've never had a fucking word, but I have rules and a block rule, and you just broke it. If I find out that someone that follows me on Twitter is a Trump fuck, I will block them. Now, I don't go through and examine everybody. I don't have time. I'm not going to examine everybody's goddamn profile. So if you want to follow me on Twitter, if you want to speak to me, much less follow me on Twitter, be a Trump supporter like most people watch bestiality videos or do fucking homemade meth or whatever in your own home with the curtains drawn, and don't let anybody know about it because you should be ashamed of yourself. If I don't know, then I won't block you, and I'll still speak to you. But if you come up to me and you say, I love Donald Trump, or you fucking tweet that I'm a Trump supporter, or you in any way make yourself known as being part of the problem that this piece of fucking shit is destroying the country, the world, and everybody's fucking lives, fuck you. So now that we got that out of the way, yeah, I had to block fucking Harry Smith. And I don't know what to think of the people, some people that you have always thought, you've lived your whole life, thought, well, that guy's okay. Or that person's on the ball, or that person's a heck of a person, or that. Then you find out this, and you can never look at that person the same way again because you now know that there is something wrong with them mentally. Whether you're a Republican or not's immaterial. If you support Donald Trump, there's something wrong with you. I may have said all kinds of things about Republicans in the past, and I really mean them. But you can still find examples of them being human beings. John McCain probably didn't turn out to be too bad of a fucking guy. But it's not even about a political party. It's about being a gullible sucker, about listening to an obvious idiot who lies every time he opens his mouth, is only concerned with himself. Everything wrong with Donald Trump was obvious the first time that we saw him. Through the whole first presidential campaign, it has been borne out by all the facts and all the evidence and all the books and all the testimony. There's been no surprises. We knew what a piece of garbage he was, to what extent. And I know some people may have been surprised at the extent of a piece of garbage he is. I wasn't. This has all been predicted. Nothing is shocking. And for anybody at this point to still say, oh, yeah, he's my, fuck you. There's something wrong with you mentally. You're fucking a lot of people around, and I don't want to be around you. I don't want to talk to you. I don't want you in my fucking life. Get the fuck off. Get the fuck off my property. Get the fuck off my Twitter. Get the fuck off my telephone. Get the fuck out of my life. Because you and people like you have fucked a lot of people around and caused a lot of fucking problems with this goddamn shit just because you can't fucking figure out a con man, a fraud, a sucker, an asshole, a liar, a charlatan, and an egomaniac. But otherwise than that, I didn't dislike Chris until I found out he gave money to Donald Trump.
Did you see the story about Chris Jericho when he voted the other day?
No, I didn't. Now how does this stuff keep on coming? Did they take a picture of him voting for Trump?
He apparently took a picture of himself right after he voted with the I voted sticker on his eye. And seemingly he used MS Paint, which is a program where you can color, to color in his bald spot with what is clearly...
No.
Yes, he did. I'm looking at the picture right now. A couple people have sent this in the last hour. He tried to
send it to me.
I'm going to send this to you. It's so
send it
ridiculous.
to me because he literally took a picture of himself saying, I just voted, and took time to fucking airbrush him some hair into the picture.
Airbrushing would be a very kind way of stating this.
Well, you know what I'm saying.
This looks like one of my children drawing with their finger, like finger painting on your phone. This is embarrassing. Well, there it is. Midlife Chris and other...
And here's what in the world would Chris Jericho... How could he fall for Donald Trump? He's in a business where fucking... You work people, and he would know what a fucking liar this guy is. And he's not a young person anymore, but I knew him when he was a young person. I just can't understand why anybody under the age of like 60 that's not a fucking, rich white billionaire or a goddamn religious fanatic would see anything that this guy could possibly do for you. Why would... Good God, I don't understand.
AEW is really into comedy. The Young Bucks on their YouTube show, they do their comedy, and there's all these funny comedy segments on the Dynamite television show. I want to pitch an idea for a good comedy segment. I want them to take their most hardcore fans, the people who love AEW the most, the people who love the Young Bucks the most, and sit them down and film the room and have Chris Jericho and the Young Bucks share their views on religion and politics with their most hardcore fans, just so we can watch their heads explode.
Well, now, wait, I know the Young Bucks, in addition to being the, right-wingers, are also the religious nuts. But is Chris found God now? Was he under the couch cushion the whole time? Is Chris religious? I
can't speak to Chris's religion, but I can say that his political views...
His political beliefs, apparently, are off-kilter.
Very in tune with the Young Bucks' beliefs, from what I gather.
What's the matter with people?
You should have known something was wrong when he went for the shooting star press a few hours before the biggest match of his career.
I thought he was just young and excited. I didn't realize it was going to be a lifelong pattern, doing stupid things in public. Anyway.
Well, let's get another question here. This was sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Paul Wise. I was wondering what Jim's thoughts are about the Jake Roberts and Bret Hart recent war of words. Have you been following this?
Well, somehow Jake managed to come out and say that Bret and Shawn were the worst WWF champions of all time.
They were too small to draw, I believe was one of the things he said.
Overlooking the fact that the biggest sack of shit that ever held the fucking belt, Kevin Nash, had just had that abysmal run in 1995 where Vince was taking in laundry as a side job to pay the rent.
How big was Jim Londos? He wasn't a big guy.
Fucking Londos was 5'6". He was stocky, so he was probably a little over 200. But people were smaller back then to begin with. But nevertheless, here's the problem. Jake's just nuts, I guess. I don't know.
You don't have to guess. You don't have to guess. You know the answer.
I was going to... Also, he could be just mad at one or both of them because they made more money than he did. And they, had a better run than he did. Because Jake he was one of the top guys in the company at one time. But obviously, it didn't last because you couldn't trust him because of the personal practices and habits that he had. And there was either an issue it's always pending or something coming up or whatever the fuck. I think Bret was a better champion than Shawn because Bret took it more seriously. Bret was bigger in Europe. Shawn didn't draw a lot anywhere, but he had really good matches, as we've mentioned many times. Bret had less spectacular matches, but more realistic matches, and was huge in international markets, Germany, Europe, etc., when that was their saving grace in that mid-90s slow period there. Jake was never the top guy because he couldn't be trusted to be the top guy and carry it. He was a top heel. But Jake had it over Bret and Shawn easily, obviously, with promos. He was a great talker. And everybody says Jake was a great psychologist. Jake was a great psychologist for what worked for Jake. If Jake had been the greatest wrestling psychologist in the world, then he'd have been the biggest booker in the world. And he was in the business back when the booker made a lot more money than the boys. Jake was a great promo, and Jake knew how to get Jake over as a slimy heel. Physically, Jake couldn't compare to either Shawn or Bret in terms of conditioning or just the fucking attractiveness of his body. Let's face it. That's why Jake wore a full bodysuit for a lot of his career, because Jake had a shit body, because he wasn't as tall as Grizzly and he wasn't as big as Grizzly. But he was about the same shape as Grizzly. Because Grizzly didn't have a great physique either. It's genetic. So they covered that up. But his work was good for Jake, but Jake's work was all about psychology and milking things and etc. And it worked for Jake. But nobody can say that Jake's matches were as good or as good on a regular basis as either Bret or Shawn, or that he was athletically anywhere in their league. It was a completely different style and a completely different person. And I wouldn't be running those things down about Jake right now, except if he hadn't said, well, Shawn and Bret were the shits. No, they weren't the shits. Nash was the shits. I mean, we can go down a list. Can you even rattle off the list? Who was the shittiest WWF champions? Stan Stasiak was bless him, was a journeyman heel who was there for the 9 days at the right time. But
he was there longer than that. Stan Stasiak drew houses with Pedro before he won the title from Pedro. He had a pretty good run, actually.
Well, yes, but I'm just not... Stan Stasiak is not a goddamn Hall of Fame top 5 all-time. He wasn't Ray Stevens as a worker. I'm saying who would have been... If you're going to say that Bret and Shawn were the shittiest champions of all time, there's a lot of other fucking competition. Jake just is mad at them. Kevin Nash was the champion. His matches were what his matches were, and he didn't draw any money. And at the time, he couldn't cut promos because they hadn't turned him fucking heel and let him be Nash, who is a very personable and witty asshole. He was trying to be Happy Diesel wearing a fucking Bruce Pritchard sweater. So that was a complete shits.
We have some quotes from Bret Hart.
Okay.
I'm trying to see where he said this. Confessions of the Hitman.
And now, wait, and let's also not forget that the Ultimate Warrior was the fucking WWF champion. He may have drawn money, but there couldn't be a single worse worker that's ever held a major belt. But Jake made money with him because he could work with him.
Apparently on Bret Hart's website, there's something called Confessions of the Hitman, and he spoke recently about Jake Roberts. Here are some quotes. He made some reference that we didn't draw, which is always, I don't know if that's a fair view. If you look at any of the WrestleManias, WrestleMania 12, you can't tell me, if you look at that crowd, that I didn't draw. I mean, it was a huge buy rate, and it was packed. Even Wembley with Bulldog was over 80,000 fans there. And to try and throw out, hey, you never drew? I wrestled in front of 100,000 people in India in 1994. And then he continues on here. I think it bothers me that someone like Jake, who never went to the gym, if he did go to the gym, he might do a set and then go smoke a cigarette outside. He was not a tough guy. He was not a legit athlete. He was strictly a promo. And he was a great worker, a great pretend wrestler. But all I know is that when my time came and they picked me to be the champion, they chose me for whatever reasons. I'm very happy that they chose me. I think it was a good choice. I certainly worked hard enough to get that opportunity. But Jake Roberts said something like we were too small and we never drew big numbers or anything like that. But I say in response to that, where was Jake Roberts? Like, why didn't Jake take the torch? Why wasn't he there? And then he continues on, and he finally concludes with...
He could have never put that... They would have never put that belt on Jake in the 80s.
This is 92. Yeah.
Oh, when after the 80s, it was... No. You couldn't trust him. See, that's the thing. With Jake's background, it's a wonderful redemption story that he's still alive, that he's still in wrestling in some respect, that he did the DDP yoga, that he's beaten his demons, that blah, 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 whatever the fuck. That's a great story, and you can tell that. But when he comes out and says, and he could actually, there's a number of guys, like I said, that he could say was a shit's the Ultimate Warrior, and people would buy it. But when he comes out and says Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels were the shits and they shouldn't have been the champion or whatever, here's a guy who everything Bret said was true about him. He never was a legitimate wrestler, real athlete, trained, did anything other than what he wanted to do to get by and talk and walk and think his way through the business instead of, take any punishment that he didn't have to take. That's not a fucking stupid thing, but it's just the easy way. But point is, Jake's no-showed everywhere. He's fucked up. He's showed up numerous times for countless people under the influence of something, embarrassing himself, doing all this shit. And nobody would ever trust him. I put a belt on him one time when he was supposedly straight, and that lasted for 3 weeks. He got to the point where nobody would trust him. Nobody would book him. If they did, they knew what they were going to get. It was generally insanity. And now if he's going to do the redemption thing, he can't be coming out and knocking people. He has to concentrate on his positive stories and his positive redemption. And now he's employed and he's sober if he is, and he's clean if he is, and he's this and that or whatever. And he's controlled his weight or his health is better or whatever. But then you can't just start turning around saying, this guy's the shits, because when you think about it, nobody had more chances or fucked up a better deal practically than Jake Roberts. So he has no room to fucking, if he's going to do the redemption story and everybody's going to feel good about him and him be a legend and everything, he's lucky that that's taking place right now. So don't turn around and say that all these guys that excelled past him because they were more trustworthy and more talented somehow suck, because then you're just getting heat on yourself again, aren't you?
Bret finished by saying that Jake Roberts has no business ever throwing stones at me and Shawn.
There you go. And imagine when you have no business throwing stones at Shawn Michaels about unprofessional behavior.
Wasn't one of Jake's stories that when he quit or when he left after WrestleMania 8, the match with The Undertaker, that he thought he was going to be part of the booking team and that Vince changed his mind?
I don't know. I know that Vince changed his mind about 3 months after he actually put him on the booking team in 96. He changed his mind. Hey, you know what? Everybody's all Cornette. He could have this job or that job. I don't want the fucking job. You know why? Because I don't need the fucking jobs. You know why? Because I didn't fuck up the whole time I was in the business making money to begin with. I've never been to fucking rehab. Never showed up in any no condition to perform or whatever the fucking case. So like I said, for these people that have tried to rehabilitate their image, I didn't need to rehabilitate mine. If you don't like me, I don't give a shit. I don't have to. But fuck, don't rehabilitate your image and then go around knocking people that honestly were fucking in their different positions better than you were.
Did you ever see that documentary, The Redemption? I think that's what it was. The Redemption of Jake the Snake Roberts?
No, I didn't. I've heard, that's why I used the word. I've heard all about these, and I think didn't they do more than one? They had camera crews following him around.
Well, that's the thing.
Paige loves the camera and the publicity and everything with stuff.
Well, it was an infomercial for DDP Yoga.
Yeah.
Anyone who considers that a serious documentary is out of their mind. It's an infomercial the whole time about the benefits of DDP Yoga. And if you remember when DDP went into the Hall of Fame, all of a sudden there's like footage of him like on a mountaintop taking the phone call teary-eyed. How did he know to be there with the fucking camera crew?
He's got a camera everywhere with him. Who did he induct in 2017 in the Hall of Fame?
Was it Jake?
Was it Jake? It was Jake. Because they had the cameras following him then. Because I was there, and I felt so bad for Paige. I like Paige. We haven't spent a lot of time around each other, but we always have a nice little chat. But his voice was trashed. He does so much the motivational speaking, public speaking. His voice was gone, and I can identify with him when I've had troubles in the past with the voice, and he was hoping he was going to be able to get that out, and he had like rested for 3 days beforehand, and he was still whispering backstage, and etc. So Paige he's got more fucking energy. I couldn't possibly imagine having that much having that much energy, and giving a shit about other people enough to just talk to everybody that he talks to on a regular basis.
Because he's trying to sell something.
I don't want money that bad.
Yeah, well, that's another point.
He is really driven and motivated, and I just,
to make money and sell and sell his yoga. Yes.
I mean, he's a talker, boy.
Let's see him get Michael Hayes on the DDP Yoga. That's your buddy, isn't it?
Oh my God, that would be interesting. And here's another thing. What the fuck? I just read somebody tweeted a link to the story the other day where Michael Hayes got drunk at Steph. I guess because it wasn't their anniversary here recently, Stephanie and Triple H.
Oh, maybe, I don't know.
I think anyway. Michael Hayes got drunk at the wedding and was singing Jailhouse Rock, and the band got mad and didn't want to play. And then finally Linda had to go and yank him off the stage. And see, that's why, people say, well, Cornette, you can't get along in the fucking corporate environment. Michael Hayes not only got drunk and annoyed people at Shane and Stephanie's wedding, but at one point, because
Stephanie and Triple H.
I'm sorry, yes, help me. Stephanie and Triple H at one point, and I like Michael too for the Freebirds. I haven't seen him lately. But at one point, they had him taking that stuff that if you drink alcohol on top of it, it makes you violently ill as a condition of his employment up there. But yet I just tell people, hey, fuck you, you're pissing me off, or here's my goddamn unvarnished opinion, and I'm persona non grata. But people can wander around and be drunk and have to take medication to not be drunk and be drunk at fucking, I don't suck up enough. I am not a good sucker.
That's what it is, because anyone who says that, oh, Jim Cornette couldn't do it, you don't understand some of the stories that are publicly known about various people who are wrestling executives in that company. Michael Hayes isn't the only one, and that's not even the worst Michael Hayes story.
Oh, God, but no, everybody is fucking absolutely batshit insane and has been up there for 30 years. But the one thing that nobody does to get in trouble that I managed to do was just tell people what they really fucking thought. And that was what was impossible to be handled. I'll just be over here, not being a drunk, not being a drug addict, doing a good job, excelling at every fucking facet of the business, and everybody else can be over there sucking up, cutting people's fucking nuts off behind their back, and engaging in fucking ridiculous personal practices that fucking hamper their ability to perform. And as long as they fucking kiss some ass, they're okay. I'll be over here.
Well, let's get another question here on Jim Cornette's Drive Thru this week.
These things just come up, don't they? They just come up.
Seemingly, that's the story of professional wrestling. Things just come up, and people love to hear about them. This next one was sent in to CornyDriveThru at gmail.com from Joe B. in Erie, Pennsylvania. What do you think of Roddy Piper's performance as the Maniac on It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia? I personally thought he was fantastic in that role.
I loved it. I wanted to get a wrestling scene out of it, though. I was kind of disappointed when they hauled the Maniac off. What was it? The offense they got him on, where they arrested him at the end of that show.
Oh, I forget. I forget if it was child support or something else. But I love that, though. That, to me, when they haul him off and he's leaving and he's yelling out the window, I love you!
Yeah. And then the fucking best part was when Frank ends up fucking making the comeback and fucking accidentally stabs the... How did the fucking guy get stabbed where he was bleeding? Or was it a girl?
No, well, Frank, the great scene in that episode, we'll get back to Piper as the Maniac, because he had a few appearances on there, but Frank shows up in the bar when they're getting ready to do their wrestling show. His gimmick will be the trash man, and he's going to throw trash all around the ring and then start eating it. So he's the referee for the event, but then he decides, because the Maniac's gone, that Rickety Cricket, who was the Taliban guy, all of a sudden the trash man hits him with the trash can, and there's a sharp edge, and it slices his jugular.
That's the thing, because then the guy's fucking bleeding out, and fucking Frank is like, uh-oh. And they must be bigger wrestling fans than we think, because that... Every time when one of these Ring of Honor shows when I was there, or on some of the OVW shows, guys would bring in trash cans, and I would literally have them go get a fucking pair of pliers and a goddamn hammer and pull the handles off, and pull the handle off the lid and the handles off the sides, and hammer the sharp edges down flat so they wouldn't bust each other open. And I popped when I saw that. The fucking jugular gets sliced and the fucking blood's spurting. It was almost as good as in the $1 Million Baby Takeoff episode when Dee's on steroids and Frank is going to train her to fight. Goddamn, what was his name on Laverne and Shirley? Carmine's daughter.
That's right.
And he fucking sucker punches Carmine, and Carmine takes a fucking bump into his daughter and knocks her down, and her fucking head lands on the edge of the stool and breaks her neck, and they just slink out of the fucking ring. Anyway, where were we going with this?
Roddy Piper as the Maniac.
Roddy Piper as the Maniac. There was a couple of them, yes, but Piper was great because, I mean, he was just... He was a personality that you liked watching him do whatever the fuck he was going to do, if sometimes for no other reason than to try to figure out exactly what the fuck he was doing. But he was perfect for television. You liked to watch him. I enjoyed all that shit. For a while there, Piper was probably the best Hollywood crossover of any of the wrestlers, right? I mean, so. as we've talked about in this episode, Hollywood crossovers have been going on since the 20s and 30s with Mike Mazurki and Nat Pendleton, for fuck's sake. But Roddy, of everybody that got a movie or some kind of deal, maybe Roddy and Terry Funk, out of the 80s popularity boom, they did the best as actually legitimate actors and performers rather than just being a wrestler in a part.
Do you remember Piper's first movie?
It was Body Slam, wasn't it?
No.
No, it was something before? They Live was after.
The One and Only.
That's right, because they shot that in L.A., and the same thing as Mighty Joe Young, and some of the L.A. guys made cameos.
And actually, that movie, in a lot of ways, changed Roddy's life. Gene LaBelle got him into that movie, and it got him his SAG card. So as long as he kept that active, Roddy had insurance for the rest of his career through the Screen Actors Guild.
Which, by the way, since all these WWE stars are on screens, and they're obviously acting these days, why are they not in the guild?
They're doing more dialogue than ever before.
What now is the difference? Before you not only could make the claim of differences, not only for the independent contractor thing in the territories when there were no written contracts, we've gone over that, but also nobody would have gone to the Screen Actors Guild to try to get involved as a wrestler because that would involve exposing the business. And not only the promoters, but the wrestlers wouldn't have done that in those days. That's why the wrestlers tried to get into TV enough to get those cards, but they wouldn't try to get in the Screen Actors Guild exclusively because we're wrestlers and we're doing this as a performance. They wouldn't say that. Now, and also there were still some differences. Now there are almost, what would the differences be between being a professional wrestler and being an actor now?
Actors are paid properly. Actors get a limousine.
No, I know. They
fly first class. What else?
I'm talking about the difference in the performance of the duties. Besides the contract that they sign, which obviously is much different than the contracts that actors sign, just cold. What's the difference between an actor taking a part in an action film, movie, television program, an action production, and being a professional wrestler now? Well, there's dialogue you're given by writers.
Yeah, there are big differences. Wrestlers play a character that they're given by the office, and they get a script, and they go out there and perform it live. I mean, there's a lot of differences.
Well, no, because if you're in a studio, if you're making a motion picture, they get a script and they give it to you, and you say and do the things you're supposed to do while the cameras are rolling. There is no difference between being a professional movie or television actor and being a professional wrestler today. There used to be, but there's not anymore. So why don't the boys at least get some benefit out of it? Since the whole product has gone to shit, at least they could get some benefit out of it on the back end of the reason why it's gone to shit. Because there is no difference now between being an actor and being a professional wrestler. I don't think they need to form their own union. I think they just need to join the one that already exists that covers the activities that they are performing.
Well, from what I understand, the Screen Actors Guild would be interested in potentially doing that. You would just need some WWE top wrestlers to reach out and say they want to do it. That's the problem. Not that wrestlers can't get unionized. It's that no one ever makes the move to do it.
That's the first rule that I learned when I got in the business. Because early on when I got into business, I got to ride with Bill Dundee. When in the summer of '83 in Georgia, when he was the booker. And he would explain to me that no matter what, and this was borne out by other veterans, Frank Morrell, all the guys that I rode with, the boys are their own worst enemies, and the boys will fuck up everything for themselves. You go to a town and you get a rate at a hotel that you're in every week, and they give you a rate and they give you a late checkout, and one of the boys is going to trash the room or have a fight with a rat, or somebody's going to be running down the hallway at 3 o'clock in the morning naked, and you're going to get booted out of the hotel. Same thing with a rental car deal, same thing, whatever the fuck, a buffet. And none of the boys can stick together from the famous, infamous time where Hogan stooged to Vince that Ventura was going to unionize the guys in the 80s. Somebody's always, especially, and it's going to be the top guys. The top guys they're going to be the happiest, and they're going to be worried about what's going to happen to their spot and or to the company if all this takes place. So they're going to stooge so that they got the promoter on their side and they keep their spot and everybody else gets punished. It's never the bottom guys that stooge, it's the top guys. But always, in any time that the guys have had the chance to get together, somebody's always broken ranks or fucking stooged or just wouldn't go along with it or whatever. And that's always going to be the way it is. But if you ever got somebody with some balls that was doing this because they really enjoyed it, but they didn't have to, and they had some money or other options, and they said, well, this should be fair. Well, then, and, that would be hard to disagree with in this day and age. And you couldn't even got away with it 20 years ago, even in the Attitude Era, because there were still other options and the whole business had not changed completely now. But now it would be entirely doable. It's just that nobody is important, as we've seen. Thanks for coming, Drew McIntyre. You beat Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania. You win the one of the world titles. That used to mean that you were going to have that belt for a long time and that you were in the cream of the crop. And instead of 6 months later, it's, well, we'll put the belt back on Randy. Thanks, Drew. Whatever. It just doesn't. So now no one person is really particularly as valuable as Hulk Hogan was in his time, or as Ric Flair was in his time, or as Buddy Rogers was in his time, or especially as Jim Londos was in his time. As a matter of fact, it's become exactly the opposite of what wrestling and boxing started out as pretty much the same concept, only different rules of a fight. Boxing, gloves, fists, wrestling. The main event guys, the world champion was the most important guy. Whoever might challenge him was the second most important guy, and you had that match and you sold tickets to it, whether it was John L. Sullivan and James J. Corbett or Strangler Lewis and fucking Frank Gotch. Well, they never wrestled each other. Gotch and Hackenschmidt. And the champion got most of the gate, and the challenger got most of what was left over, and the promoter hoped to make a little money. And by the time that Londos was so hot in the 20s and 30s, people were they were running shows on purpose just if they could get him to work for them. And he was cleaning up and making all the fucking money, just like Lewis had and Sheik had and all those names. And then once all the ex-wrestlers retired and became promoters and TV came in, then all the promoters started making all the money because they were all the top wrestlers and they learned all the tricks and they got guys over, and they needed top guys, but they still had first count. So the top guys made real good money and the promoters made a fortune. And now it's become that the promoters really don't make anything unless you're Vince McMahon, because nobody else does either. And the fucking wrestlers are all interchangeable and they're not the attraction. They're just the fucking, the cogs that make the wheels go around. And it's complete. And whereas Mayweather makes $200 million for a fucking fight, Conor McGregor made more money in one night doing a fucking work boxing gimmick than he made in his entire UFC career. And wrestlers, they make little or nothing in the overall scheme of things. It's completely reversed. Boxing stayed the same. The champion and the top guys make all the fucking money, and then the promoters make a lot of money. In wrestling, the promoters make all the money, and then the wrestlers, except for the ones that work for Vince. Wrestlers that work for Vince make a lot of money and not nearly what they should. And everybody else is starving to death. What the fuck?
To finish this off where we started, Roddy Piper, the actor, what did you think of They Live?
I like that too, because not only was it, I like science fiction movies, but it was cool to see a wrestler back in those days in an actual movie or on television, anything other than a TV show. But I liked Ventura's shit with Schwarzenegger too, because that's cool. One of the boys up there, right? Back in those days, we didn't get a lot of recognition at all.
What about Terry Funk and Roadhouse?
That was my favorite was Paradise Alley. But Roadhouse was great, but I just loved Paradise Alley because not only did you get to see Funk, but the whole movie was really about wrestling, and you got to see all those fucking Amarillo clips and Stevens take the upside down bump and all that shit. So my favorite Terry Funk movie was Paradise Alley.
He was also in Over the Top. Remember the Sylvester Stallone arm wrestling movie?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I did the song Over the Top.
Sammy Hagar.
Yes, I did a heck of a not Jake, by the way, but Sammy did a heck of a music video with Flair and Steamboat to that particular little ditty. It's time we make it over the top.
See, there was a good one in UWF for that with Dr. Death and Terry Gordy.
I remember seeing that too.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, very
fantastic. I guess maybe Joel Watts made that one if I had to guess. Well,
you would be correct. You would be correct. Watts actually had Joel, and this would, because Joel was a nice guy, but he was not like a fireball over the top personality. And Randy West, who did the videos in Memphis, was the same thing. He was a real nice guy, but he wasn't like an over the top crazy wrestling person. He's just, he's Jerry's brother-in-law there, right? So Watts sent Joel up to talk to Randy West to see how they were doing the music videos, because Jared had started doing those. I'm thinking that must have been a fucking hilarious conversation, because here is Joel Watts from Oklahoma talking to Randy West from Middle Tennessee about how that they're basically ripping off MTV ZZ Top videos to get baby faces over, when I don't know that Randy West had ever listened to a rock and roll song in his life. It was hilarious. They were just basically, Jarrett was having all the ideas, and Jerry Jarrett doesn't sound like he'd be the goddamn king of rock and roll either, but he knew what was on television, and Nashville was one of the early places to get cable and have MTV. And he would just show Randy West, here's this ZZ Top video, and he put the VHS tape in and play it, and he go shoot that with the Fabs. So suddenly Randy West, who'd never done one of these things before, because it never been done before in wrestling, and he wasn't a cameraman. The only reason he was a cameraman is because they hired him to run the fucking camera. So gets the reputation as like he's the goddamn Francesco Scavullo and Martin Scorsese of wrestling music videos. And so Watts sends his son Joel up to learn from Randy, who learned by just watching the goddamn ZZ Top video on a VHS. It was like they were passing government secrets. Go up there and learn how they're doing these.
Well, Jim, we have one or two more questions as well as a song or two in equal time, but I want to make sure that we get these in because so many people have been sending in questions. I mean, it's a ridiculous amount that have been coming in. I don't want anyone to get mad and say that we're ignoring them and sue us for not answering their questions on the air. And that is my awful transition of this week's episode.
Well, I'll tell you what, they're not going to sue us because we would then respond with the hammer of justice wielded by the Norse god of thunder and courtrooms, the one, the only.
Call Stephen P. News. If you need to sue. An outlaw mud show or two. Still sue the rest.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, even if you have been the victim of a bad segue by Brian Last, whose brain has farted, you too can be represented in court and get your legal remedies, your compensation for if you've been damaged or harmed in any way by calling Stephen P. New at newlawoffice.com, 888-692-8084. A plethora of cases that he is currently involved in. Just, folks, so you know, some of these, the time periods for opting into these litigations or being involved in this is running out. He's currently, the new law office currently doing opioid litigation. The folks that have been preyed upon by these big pharmaceutical companies, some of the babies born addicted to opioids, some of the people that have been born that have been addicted to opioids because of overprescription, et cetera, and lack of warnings from these companies. Cases are going to be filed by March of 2021 in opioid litigation. The 3M company made defective military earplugs, and some of our service people got hearing damage. That's going to be filed by next summer. And the Zantac cancer litigation. I actually used to take Zantac like chiclets years ago, and I haven't in a while, and I never will again. Hopefully, I don't have to retain Stephen P. New at any point, but if you do, those cases are going to be going into court by next summer. So whether it's personal injury or wrongful death, he does review those cases on a case-by-case basis. But if you have been in some way damaged, infringed upon, or are in one of these groups that have been hurt by these various acts, Stephen P. New and newlawoffice.com, 888-692-8084 can help you out. And just a little tease, just a little tickle of the taint, Mr. New may even be involved in some cases involving the wrestling industry very soon. Not even with me. I'm trying to stay out of the litigation business here for at least the next 3 to 6 months, but stay tuned for more on that. We may have Stephen back in for some enlightening discussion on some of the happenings in the world today over the next several months.
Well, Jim, a couple more quick questions before we wrap things up. One that a lot of people have sent in, and I will ask you a generic version of all their questions, but you've known him since he first got into wrestling. What are your thoughts on the news that John Cena has finally gotten married?
Well, I hope he's happy. I don't know anything about it. At least he waited until he found the right person. Wasn't that his problem with one of the Bellas? He didn't want to make a commitment or whatever. I don't know. I don't watch Total Divas.
Yeah, I don't know. They got engaged at WrestleMania.
Well, not in the ring.
In the middle of the ring.
What? They did?
Yes, they did.
How did I miss that?
I have no idea.
No, this girl he just married?
Oh, no. I thought you were talking about the Bellas.
No, I didn't watch that WrestleMania. I was thinking this year's WrestleMania.
No.
I don't give a fuck whether anybody gets married or not. They've got the right to be just as miserable as the rest of us. No, I wish him all the best.
Was he a ladies' man in OVW?
Well, the ladies liked him, and yes, he did like ladies, but it wasn't. He was never in any way, to me, irresponsible. I didn't care what he did outside the ring, as long as he showed up, did his job, excelled, and didn't get OVW any bad publicity. And he was always very professional there and went over and above and beyond, because he's another guy like The Rock. If he's going to do something, he's going to find the time and the will and the way to do it. But I assume his social life was very happy. I didn't mess in that area of the boys' business.
And you're happy for him? I'm
happy for him.
You think
because he didn't do it on a wrestling show as part of a wrestling angle, and it didn't suck. Then it's fine. See, I'm cheerful for the boys to do things and happy things in their personal life, as long as it's not silly, goofy, phony shit on the wrestling program.
It must be tough to be in a relationship with someone like the Bellas, because they're like Dallas Page. There's always a camera crew following them around to film everything, and it's put it on their e-show they have, which is unwatchable to everyone.
That may be why I hadn't watched it, but well, I mean, I wouldn't do it. Maybe, the Osbournes, they started this whole thing. Ozzy knows best. I wouldn't do it. I don't know why they wanted to. I don't know why anybody wants to be on television, wants their personal life to be on TV 24 hours a day. Because I'm not really that interested in most people's personal life. They say mine would be interesting. I don't know. You're not going to find out.
16 hours of packaging T-shirts on the floor.
Yeah, well, we don't even do goddamn video on the podcast because, number one, I'm not going to have to bathe and shave on a daily basis just to do a podcast. And number two, if we're doing television, it needs to be professional. I'm not just going to fucking, like the rest of these people, just sit a goddamn camera in front of my noggin and show my head, my giant disembodied head speaking for 3 hours or whatever. That's not television. That's just stupid. So I don't know why you would want a camera crew in your fucking home. That's what they said. Would I ever do Legends House? For 3 hours one afternoon, it'd be fun to visit with all the people in that house. I wouldn't spend the fucking night there, much less a month or however long they did. I don't like staying in hotels where I'm the only one in the room.
All right, well, a few more quick questions here sent in by Charlie in Starkville, Mississippi.
I should have known.
Jon Moxley recently commented on his friendship with Tony Khan. Moxley said, quote, "I've become great friends with Tony Khan, who is a great dude and the most successful promoter outside of Vince McMahon in many years." End quote. What are your thoughts on Moxley's friendship with Khan and his view of him as a promoter?
Well, if he's his friend, he'd have to have that view, wouldn't he? Because if he say, I really like this guy, but Jesus Christ, he doesn't know his ass from a hole in the ground on wrestling, that probably wouldn't do their friendship any good. So if you take it as Jon Moxley saying that, yeah, my friend's a good promoter too, then that's perfectly fine. If you take that as an unbiased, independent observation, you're fucking nuts. And again, people are going to say, well, he's got TNT television and he's got this. And yeah, because he's the son of a billionaire and they own professional sports franchises and major arenas. And so they traveled in the same social circle as the guy that was programming at the time, TNT. That's how that show got on the air. Is anybody really convinced that somebody with the greatest wrestling program ever aired and the greatest talent roster ever assembled in wrestling was going to walk in cold and get that same deal because they weren't at the same cocktail party as Kevin Riley? I give him all the benefit and praise in the world for his connections and the people he's able to contact and deal with and talk to because of the other businesses that Tony Khan is involved in. But let's face it, fucking P.T. Barnum could have come back from the dead and not been able to get that spot just because they weren't looking for wrestling. Here's a guy that owns a football team in Wembley Stadium and this thing and that thing. Oh, he's going to start a wrestling promotion. Okay.
Well, no, he doesn't own any of that. His father owns it, and his father owns AEW. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying. So did he start it from scratch the old-fashioned way and blah, blah, blah? No. You can't really do that anymore. But I can't imagine anybody saying, okay, just on the verge of the fact that he had the connections to get the show on the air, and he, let's face it, bungled the opportunity to have the best talent roster by relying on the views of a few certain people to sign all their friends instead of available talent. And the show has been a shit show that has basically held the same audience, which is the sum total of people in this country that are going to watch children play act wrestling. So is he the greatest promoter besides Vince in many years? No, absolutely not. Because you have to actually be good at something to be the greatest anything or the best anything in whatever time period. The booking's been abysmal. The talent roster is all over the fucking place and is half rotten. And they got on TV because of connections. I'm not knocking the guy. I'm just telling the truth. In what way has he excelled past a rich guy already having connections to do all this stuff? But the problem is he opened a restaurant and the food tastes like shit. Because he hired the wrong chefs and bought the wrong ingredients. It's still a big restaurant. And some people like the taste of shit because they're so desperate to come from the restaurant across the street where they're shoving battery acid down your throat. I don't know what else to say.
Do you think that there's any benefit at all to a promoter being friends with the talent?
Very little. It's very beneficial if the talent likes the promoter and if the promoter likes the talent, but ultimately it's a business relationship and you have to, at some point, I mean, I had that problem in Smoky Mountain where you couldn't have more than 18 guys. So sometimes guys had to go. And I hated because I liked some guys to not be able to book them anymore and try to find places for them to go. Other times I kept guys, even if they were a little stale, because there was nobody available to replace them that were as good as them. And I figured, well, I'm not going to fucking take a goddamn step down, even if it's new. I'll keep the guy that can outperform the other guy, even if he's old. But eventually you're going to have to fire people. And how do you, then Tony, well, I got to let you go, John.
I thought we were friends.
Yeah, exactly. That's when that comes up.
We used to hang out by the fence.
Yeah, down in the boiler room. In front of the fucking concrete block wall. We were buds.
I gave you some of my thumbtacks, man.
Yeah. The tax, man, the tax. I don't know. It just, everybody's gone off the deep end with this thing. I wish, I wish it was successful. I wish it was a good show. Then not only would we watch it and have some good shit to watch and talk about, but as I said before, they might actually get some viewers and bring some people back to watching wrestling instead of the people that are the only people that can watch AEW are people that want to watch wrestling and laugh at it and make a joke out of it. Everybody else is offended.
See, I'm bothered for very selfish reasons. Like you said, I want it to be a good show. I want to be able to, I truly wanted to have a new product that I would enjoy. And they have just treated me the way they've treated all the other fans. But let's get our final question on this week's show. This was sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Tim in Newark, New Jersey. I've noticed Dennis Condrey did it. I've noticed Ric Flair did it. And countless others as well. What is the point of putting a thin band of athletic tape, roughly the width of a wedding ring, around the first or second knuckle of your fingers? If it was lower down to hide or secure an actual wedding ring, that would make sense. But up near the fingertip? Was this for grip? To secure a broken finger? Or what?
Well, several of those things. Some guys, I think Flair did cover up his ring for a while at one point.
Some guys did do that. That was a thing where guys would never take off their wedding ring because their wife would know if she watched TV. So they would just put tape over it.
Well, yeah, because here's the thing, rings now when guys have started wearing earrings and all kinds of shit, jewelry and whatever, you can get an ear ripped off. You can lose a finger if you're wearing a ring or an earring or whatever. It can happen. So the rule would be no jewelry, but if guys didn't want to take the ring off, they'd tape it up. That way you can't hang it on something. Also, Dennis Condrey always had a tape on some of his fingers because he had a chronic finger break. And actually, if I'm thinking back now, it's been so many years, but I think his little finger, he always taped to the next finger on one hand because guys used to break their that used to be the injuries, broken fingers, broken teeth, busted nose, not surgery stuff, but shit like that because it was a different style. So sometimes guys have their finger taped because they've got a broken finger or they've got a finger that's susceptible or one that shoots a different way unless you tape it down. Flair also had the old-fashioned blade method that was on his finger always. Because a lot of guys would put their blade, tape it to their wrist on their wrist tape. And if you've got the tape around your blade is white and your wrist tape is white and a strip of tape is taping your blade to your wrist, you can't see it. And when you pull it out, you've got it taped in the right place. So when you pull it off and you use it, then you can stick it back in your trunks or whatever. Whenever I did it, I always did that because Flair would make that blade and tape it to the side of his index finger. and he would have a piece of tape lapped over the sharp part. So when he went down, he could take his thumb and he could flip the fucking piece of tape over the blade off of the sharp part, and it's still on his finger, and boom, and get it, and then it would still be on his fucking hand. And that was his chopping hand. But he'd flap the tape back over the top of it, and boom, and so there was a lot of sleight of hand and magic going on. But generally, even if a guy wasn't going to get juice in a match, he would tape the same way every time, because that way you wouldn't be able to tell every time he had a tape on a certain way, he was bleeding. So they just do it all the time. There's a variety of reasons. Or sometimes just because they liked the way it looked. I don't know about the fingers, but a lot of times guys started using that black electrical tape to make their biceps look bigger and shit. That was a thing for a while. But that's a finger tape is usually for either injuries or blades, or to make it so that you can't tell when somebody's got a blade and somebody doesn't.
Well, there it is. And before we wrap things up and play a song, some equal time where dissenting views are sent into CornyDriveThru@gmail.com. And
this is your segment. You sponsor this segment.
Well, we have one for you and one for me this week. This first one was sent in by James from Jamestown. Don't piss down my back and tell me it's raining. At 5'8", 140 pounds, Bruce Lee has zero chance against Hulk Hogan. Hulk was not known as a shooter, but come on. It's not like he was a pussy either. He did work in Japan, so I'm certain he could take a punch and anything Bruce could do. Only a kick in the nose would do it, and Hulk would reach, and Hulk has the reach on Bruce's legs even. I'm saying once Hulk got a hold of Bruce Lee, there isn't a damn thing he could do about it. Then you say Floyd would beat Paul in a boxing match. Seriously?
Wait a minute. Who's Floyd and Paul? I can't remember.
I guess Floyd Mayweather Jr. and Paul, the Big Show White, is all I could assume.
Oh, okay.
Did you not see when Foreman knocked out Roy Jones Jr.? There's a reason there are weight classes, pal. Let's say they do make boxing gloves big enough for the Giant. I tell you, they better have mattresses in the third row for Mayweather to land on, because that's where he's going if Paul hits him. This AEW shit has fried your brain, man. Verbally fuck me up if you wish. But I know I'm not the only one thinking this in podcast land. And there it is from James in Jamestown. Any response from you?
Well, yes, of course. Big Show would probably knock him goofy if he hit him. That's the biggest if. I thought we had settled this when people now have realized that the different fighting disciplines do not favor boxers, they favor wrestlers, or they favor, if it's any rules, or if it's boxing, it favors the boxer regardless of the size of the wrestler. Yes, Mayweather, knowing what he's doing, being in much better cardio, but being 200 pounds lighter, is just going to stay away from the fucking guy. And if they're having a boxing match until poor old Show, and I know it's possible for him to do this because he did it in OVW, blows up and pukes. With Bruce Lee and Hulk Hogan, I'm sorry that a guy who developed his own fucking brand of martial arts and instructed many of the not only Hollywood celebrities, but martial artists of the next generation that would go on to make all those fucking films that you think would not be able to handle Hulk Hogan, who has a background as a bass player in a bar band in Tampa. But I guarantee you, if Bruce Lee got that 1-inch punch on fucking Hogan's nose, and or one of those fucking kicks to Hogan's nuts, the fight wouldn't last long. And once again, how long do you think it's going to take Hogan to catch Bruce Lee, who then would have the ability to fucking tap him out from underneath, because Hogan would have had no idea, especially in the 70s, of what the fuck jiu-jitsu consisted of. So it's fucking ridiculous. We're not talking about a trained Olympic level athlete in the same discipline as Bruce Lee. We're talking about Hulk Hogan and Bruce Lee, and it's just fucking ridiculous.
Well, speaking of ridiculous, here's our next equal time submission. Hey, Jim, this is Kashif from Brooklyn, New York City. I appreciate you not being racist towards black wrestlers. I always can tell you're not racist because even though you may not like a black wrestler's gimmick, most of the time neither do I, you always find a way to compliment them in some way. But I've noticed that Brian is down on every black wrestler.
Uh-oh.
Is he racist? I think he is. I've been listening to both of your podcasts, Jim, and I've noticed how much Brian makes a point to talk down every black wrestler. I'm sure he will avoid this email, but the truth had to be said.
All those horrible things you've said about Ernie Ladd. And did Bobo Brazil really deserve that tongue lashing you gave him? And for heaven's sake, what about the Black Panther Jim Mitchell?
Fantastic book by John Cosper. But let me just say, I don't know if there's been anyone more vocal than me through my various podcasts that Junkyard Dog belongs in the Wrestling Observer Newsletter Hall of Fame. I think Butch Reed is one of the most underrated wrestlers of the 1980s. I was a fan of Doom. I just recently really liked Leo Rush, even though you didn't, in NXT.
Oh,
I really was high on Keith Lee until they brought him up to the main roster.
That mental case. Leo Rush said something stupid running his mouth on Twitter. I said, shut the fuck up, you fucking mental case. And he wrote back and he said, did you just call a spokesman for mental health advocacy a mental case? And I wrote back and said, apparently I fucking did.
Is he really a spokesman?
He fucking is. I guess. I don't know. I don't have his fucking resume and bio in front of me, a fucking little goof. But it's not because of what color he is. It's because of stupid shit that he does.
I think I said recently that Ian Riccaboni and Caprice Coleman were the best commentating team in wrestling. I don't know, Kashif. I don't know if you're listening well enough.
All those horrible things you're saying about these. You know, they got mad at me for saying that Caprice Coleman was a color commentator.
I saw that, yeah. Well, there it is. Equal time. And with that... All right.
Jesus, just cut that one off.
Well, with that said, you can join us on the Jim Cornette Experience when it debuts this Friday, wherever you find your favorite podcasts. Of course, the drive-thru next week will be released once again on Tuesday. Prepare yourself right now. Write it in your schedule, in your calendar.
Put
Tuesday.
It right down there.
You can hear classic episodes of the drive-thru.
And hey, remember, turn your clocks back this weekend. It's Halloween. And it's fall back on the daylight savings time business. Public service here from the program. And our show will be out next Tuesday because it's also my anniversary weekend.
Happy anniversary. And don't forget you could celebrate that anniversary by going through the archive at patreon.com/Cornette. For only $5 a month, you get access to each and every episode of the Drive-Thru and the Experience from the beginning in November of 2013 up until the fall of 2015 with new episodes added each and every week on Sunday evening. Patreon.com/Cornette. The official Jim Cornette YouTube channel. Just go to YouTube and search for Jim Cornette. Be a part of all that's happening. Full episodes, clips of episodes, omnibus collections, closing in on 170,000 subscribers. Be one of them today on our march to 1 million.
Be two of them if you want to.
That's right. The official Jim Cornette YouTube channel. You can follow Jim on Twitter at the Jim Cornette. You can follow me on Twitter at Great Brian Last. You can hear me on the 605 Superpodcast at 605pod.com. Available wherever you find your favorite podcasts. Don't forget about Cornette's Collectibles at JimCornette.com. It is that time of year you have to prepare yourself for the holidays. And what better time than now, Jim, to go and spend all your money at JimCornette.com.
That's right. JimCornette.com, Cornette's Collectibles. We've caught up. We're only a few days behind now. I'm shoving shit down people's chimneys for Christmas this year. Come get your chimney packed at Cornette's Collectibles.
The drive-thru is brought to you by the Law Office of Stephen P. New, 888-692-8084. Get even with Stephen at newlawoffice.com. But until Friday on The Experience, and next Tuesday, right back here on the drive-thru, for Jim Cornette, I'm the Great Brian Last. Tally ho!